Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Now you can hear me. That was so weird because it was plugged into the right camera, and then literally as soon as it went from like, that was weird. That was weird. I swear it was working, but now it's working again. It's okay. It must be. Thank God it's not Mercury retrograde. I probably just messed something up. We're okay. We made it. That could have been a lot worse. Hey guys, welcome to The Cult. Happy Tuesday. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, maybe some other places as well, where we talk about all aspects of the culture war, all the way from the farthest of the far left, abolish the family goodness, to the farthest of the far right with our apparently a Nick Fuentes curse. I don't know why. Like, no, the Grapers like me right now. We're not cursed. We're not. I mean, that might change. The Groypers are a fickle folk, but I am happy that Milk Tea Groyper is coming back and joining us. I do hope some other Groypers will come and join us as well, because today's episode was specifically inspired by the Groypers. You know, here's the thing. I feel like I'm keeping a little bit of an open mind in regards to some of the things. Like, the reality is this, and I know I know that everything I said and did last week and this week and moving forward in regards to Nick Fuentes is probably going to come back and bite me in the ass. I am well aware of that. I've been being called an anti-Semite for a tweet that was taken out of context like almost 2 years ago now, forever, by the conservative right, when the tweet I sent really had nothing to even do with the Jews. It was an analogy in which I used Hitler and the Holocaust to describe God's pure love. They took it out of context, labeled me as an anti-Semite. And it had nothing to do with the Jews. And I've never been able to escape it, even though I was completely correct in every single thing that I said in that tweet, if you looked at it in context. But context doesn't matter, apparently. Anyway, I probably should have known back in December of 2021 when they did that to me and then smeared me as an anti-Semite all over the internet, when I've never cared if people are Jewish or not. I probably should have known then that something was up. And I got to tell you, like, the disconnect between what I've seen from conservative influencers, like, all of a sudden going from being the bastion of free speech and classical liberal ideals, Dave Rubin, to saying that we should censor speech we don't agree with, that's given me a lot of pause. The other thing that's given me a lot of pause about all this is just the aggressive support for Israel from people who I don't know why they're so aggressively supporting Israel. And I'm a person that I don't have a side in this conflict. I really don't. I am not pro-Palestine. I'm definitely not pro-Hamas. I'm not pro-Israel either. I think that both sides are bad and guilty of things against the other side. And I, like, deliberately haven't taken a side, but even that's not fucking good enough. It's not good enough to not take a side. Either you are overtly, aggressively pro-Israel or you are an anti-Semite, according to the right now. And I got to tell you, it's given me a lot of pause. I'm flashing back to the knitting wars where I was either supposed to be actively anti-racist, or that was proof, if I wasn't actively anti-racist, that was proof that I was a racist. I don't like it. Naruto says, please distract me from World War III insanity happening on Twitter. Well, I don't know that we're going to do that. But suffice it to say, it has given me a lot of pause. And I do feel like I'm trying to keep an open mind, because I, you know, I go wherever the information takes me. I've spent the last year and a half doing deep dives into radical revolutionary socialists. I go where the information takes me. I don't have to, excuse me, I don't have to like someone in order to consider their ideas. I don't have to agree with an idea in order to consider other things the person might say. So for instance, in regards to like Nick Fuentes, I don't agree with his Holocaust denial stuff. I think the Holocaust happened. I do. I'm sorry. But am I going to dismiss unilaterally every other thing that Nick Fuentes has to say because he has some crazy ideas that I don't agree with? No, he's allowed to have crazy ideas. I'm allowed to have crazy ideas. You're allowed to have crazy ideas. This is America, goddammit. We are allowed to have crazy ideas. We are allowed to say things that other people don't like. And in fact, like, the only speech that really needs to be protected is speech that's going to piss someone off. If everyone likes what you're saying, that speech doesn't need to be protected because no one's going to try to silence you. We're not. Relax. We're not. This is just the intro. So all this is to say that I've really been trying to keep an open mind when it comes to things that Nick Fuentes has to say, and I do agree with a lot of his analysis on the Israel-Palestine issue. I really do. And I would encourage everyone, don't listen to Nick Fuentes out of context. Don't listen to these little clips. I mean, if you want to start off with a clip, fine. But don't. He's much better when you see the full context of what he's doing. And I would encourage everyone, watch his show. He streams every night. And it happens to be at a perfect time for me because I'm a night owl, so I work late at night. So I've been having his stream on as I've been doing other work. So it works out great for me. But if you aren't a night owl, go watch it on Rumble the next day, or go watch it. Decide for yourself instead of just taking people's word for it that he's an anti-Semite and a racist and a white supremacist and a horrible person. Go watch it for yourself and decide. But the reason I bring this up is not that we're going to spend time talking about Nick Fuentes today, because we're not. This is going to be mostly a Nick Fuentes free stream. But the reason that this relates back to Nick Fuentes is, well, a couple of reasons. Number one, I know that even by considering his ideas, I'm going to be like a pariah now for all time. But I kind of think that's okay because, like, I already was. They already labeled me as an anti Semite almost 2 years ago for a tweet that they took out of context. Like, they never let me live that down. Never. Been punishing me for it ever since. Stealing all my shit ever since, pretending they didn't know where it came from. Like, the amount of, like, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, like, I fully well know that this is going to bite me in the ass, and I'm starting to feel okay with that. But the trade-off is that I now have an audience that has groypers in it on Twitter. And my philosophy behind kind of like this whole kind of like thing is, what if what if I can use this as an opportunity to teach groypers where they're wrong about things? Because I really do believe, we can put the Jewish stuff aside for a second, okay? I'm going to keep an open mind about the Jewish stuff because I try to keep an open mind about everything. I think you should keep an open mind about everything. But I really do think that Nick Fuentes and the groypers are wrong about the race stuff. I really do. I understand why they believe what they believe, but I think it's because of the oh god, dare I use terminology of the left. I think it's the lens that they're looking at it through and the sources that they're consuming that is the problem. And this is true of most people on the right. Most people on the right do not understand the left. They all think they understand the left, but they really don't because they're not looking at the right sources. What they're looking at is outrage porn and clickbait and like all this stuff that is not based in reality at all. So I did a little experiment on Twitter today. I said, "Hey groypers, I will keep an open mind about the Jewish stuff, and I'll let you teach me things, and I promise to sincerely consider what you're saying. I'm not guaranteeing I'll agree with it. I don't think you're ever going to convince me about like the Holocaust not happening. I'm pretty solid in that, but if we can't challenge our own ideas, then what's really the point? So I'll keep an open mind. But in return, groypers, I want you to keep an open mind about what I'm going to teach you about the race stuff. Because not everything that you don't like is anti-white, 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 anti-white. In fact, I don't even allow the phrase anti-white to be used on my channel because of how toxic of an audience that phrase elicits. I don't allow it. I have some experience with this. I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say it was the worst cancellation experience of my life, to where I was pushed to within an inch of my goddamn sanity by these people. I have deep dived into this extensively. Anti-white is a right-wing talking point. It has nothing to do with what the left is doing. It really doesn't. And so, while I understand why you believe what you do, groypers, I really, really do. I am hopeful that if I, in good faith, keep an open mind with you, and I act in good faith, and I have conversations with you, because I don't do this debating bullshit. I don't. I don't believe in debating. I don't believe debating changes anyone's mind. I don't believe it's a productive exercise. I believe it's philosophical masturbation at best. If I keep an open mind with you, I'm going to ask that you keep an open mind with me, because conversations are two-way streets, okay? It has to go in both directions. And I think that how these guys are perceiving the issue of race in particular is problematic for their understanding of the left and what's actually going on. When what is actually going on is so much worse than what they think, but they don't know that because they haven't been exposed to the same type of content that many regular viewers of my channel have been, because they just haven't, because the people they've been watching aren't talking about it. And that's okay. Not everyone has to be a master of everything, right? That's part of why I do this. But I'm hopeful that maybe we can share some information. And I think that they might be stronger in some areas than me, and I might be stronger in some areas than them. And maybe there are unholy alliances that can be drawn. That's all I'm saying. And so that kind of was the inspiration for what we're going to do today. We are going to watch today a lecture from a long ass time ago, from like 6 years ago, about how whiteness is not about skin color. Whiteness is about capitalism. Whiteness is about private property. It is a signifier of the private property owner, the bourgeois, the landlord, etc., etc. Thank you, Milk Tea Griper, for the super sticker. I do appreciate it. And the reason we know this is because they'll tell us this. They'll tell us this. The number one enemy of the far left is not white people. The far left is filled with white people. Some white people are their patron saints. Robin DiAngelo was their patron saint for like years. Robin DiAngelo is a white lady. Until she said that all white people are racist one too many times on video, and then she got demoted several notches, and then Ibram X. Kendi took her place. He was much more convenient, very black, and now Ibram X. Kendi is having a whole scandal at my alma mater, and well, it's not really Nick's alma mater. He didn't graduate, but my alma mater, Boston University, Ibram X. Kendi has this whole scandal where he grossly mismanages like $20 million, which is another story for another day. The point is that the left will tell you what these words mean, and they have nothing to do with skin color. And I'm going to prove that to you. But first, I'm going to take this super chat from Naruto. Looking at evidence and following it to uncomfortable truths, thinking for yourself, what a revolutionary idea. Why has no one thought of this before? It more elusive than I would have imagined. So what we're going to do today, guys, is we're going to watch a lecture about how whiteness is property. But I want to just give you some context going into it. One of the reasons I was a little bit late today on the stream is because I couldn't decide what lecture to watch. And the reason that I couldn't decide what lecture to watch, and you guys can all do this as an experiment, just put whiteness is property into YouTube and then scroll down a little bit. And I want to just show you something. There is a whole series of lectures from UCLA Law School. UCLA Law School is the home of Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw is black, but one of the patron saints of critical race theory. She was one of the inventors of she's the inventor of intersectionality. She studied with Derek Bell. Derek Bell was one of the inventors of critical race theory. So, but I want to show you this. This is 9 years ago. I'm sorry. It got uploaded to the internet 6 years ago. This is 9 years old. And we know that the left completed their long march through the institutions around about 2010-ish. And then look at this, a couple years later, whiteness as property, a 20-year appraisal comes up. And this is not just one lecture, guys. This is not just one. Look at all these lectures. They have all the different aspects of whiteness as property. So conceptual origins and disruptions, radicalizing childhood and parenthood. We almost watched this one today. I was like, oh, this is going to be some abolish the family hell, because the far left believes that in order to abolish capitalism, they need to abolish the nuclear family, because they believe that the nuclear family upholds capitalism. So we're going to watch that one at some point. Not today, though. We've got whiteness and criminal justice, construction of identities, whiteness aesthetic properties, etc., etc., etc. This goes on and on and on. All of these lectures were part of the Critical Race Studies annual symposium that had been going on for 7 years but in 2014, which is around, again, the same time they completed their long march through the institutions. And it's literally called Whiteness as Property. And this is what we're going to watch today. We are going to watch the keynote of this series of lectures, because I thought that would probably be a pretty good place to start. The keynote is by a woman named Cheryl Harris. Does anyone know what Cheryl Harris is famous for? Any ideas what Cheryl Harris is famous for? The most famous thing that Cheryl Harris has ever done was in Harvard Law Review. in 1993. Bing. Whiteness. I guess it says it here too. Whiteness as property. Whiteness as property. Cheryl Harris. This is a very famous paper that has the basis for what we're going to talk about. So I've been arguing a lot today with some gripers on Twitter who don't want to believe that whiteness is about capitalism and private property. And just so we're clear, gripers, like the woke left, and I know not everyone that doesn't believe this are gripers, all right? I'm just being colloquial. Everyone relax. But the point is this: they're not talking about whiteness as skin color. They're talking about whiteness as property. And private property and capitalism go hand in hand for the far left. Akshay is asking, is the paper on Google Scholar? I'll pop the link in the chat, Akshay. So I want the gripers before we get into this, and anyone else who might be skeptical. And listen, I want to be very, very clear. I understand why people are skeptical about this idea. I really do. Because there was a time when I did not understand this either. When I wrote my book, Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against the Woke Insanity in Your Life, you can find a link to buy it in the description below. I hadn't fully wrapped my head around this idea yet. I was still thinking, like, I knew that this came from Marxism and I knew that whiteness was an assigner of like who owns the power structure, but I was still grappling with, is it about skin colors? Is it racist against white people? Like, what is it? Because, and this, by the way, was around the same time. I actually was literally finishing my book at the same time that the anti-white bullshit cancel mob decided to come for me for 3 straight weeks and terrorize me. This all happened like literally in the same month. So there was a time when I didn't understand this either. And I've learned a lot since I wrote that book. The book still holds up. Through some miracle, the book still holds up. Like, everything I wrote in the book was correct, but I hadn't quite gone the extra mile yet. So I understand why people think that whiteness has to do with skin color. That's what makes sense, right? But you have to understand that the left speaks in a coded language. They do this purposefully to confuse you so that you fight the wrong problem. If you are fighting the problem of, they're trying to eradicate white people, they're not. They're really not. That's not the problem you should be fighting. And if you focus all your energy on that, then you're not going to be fighting the real problems that they are creating by trying to eliminate all private property. And when I say private property, the left doesn't just mean your home. They don't just mean your car. They don't just mean your private business. They also mean your family. The left considers the family and your children to be property. And I know that because there is literally a lecture in this called Radicalizing Childhood and Parenthood. There's a reason they're going after parental rights, guys. All of the attacks on parental rights are from these people. And it's important that you understand why they're doing it. The why is just as important as the what. In some respects, the why is more important than the what. And the right has done a really shitty job of explaining the why. And I'm sorry for that. I really do wish your influencers had been better. I wish I had realized this sooner. I wish James Lindsay wasn't so fucking academic all the time. I wish there were more people that were doing these types of deep dives. I really do. I fucking hate that I am the only person on the internet teaching it like this because there's way too much content. I can't cover it all. I wish there were dozens of people doing what I'm doing because not everyone's going to respond to me as a teacher either. There need to be more people teaching this. But the point is that it's not just enough to look at the clickbait that's put on the internet, because the clickbait on the internet is designed to piss you off so that you click on something, you share it, you make someone else money by engaging in their content. That's not what we're doing here. Well, VIP Tundra, okay, I don't think it's a mystery to us that the left wants to abolish the nuclear family, but do you know why? Can you explain why? I'm really asking. My audience can explain why. They know why. Why does the left, guys, just like honestly, for any groypers in the chat right now, why does the left want to abolish the nuclear family? If you know the answer and you bet in my audience, don't answer it. Don't ruin it, okay? Why does the left want to abolish the nuclear family? Well, you guys are answering that. I just want to take a couple super chats. Naruto says, very low level woke people make this mistake too. That's exactly right. A lot of them do. A lot of them do. And then Raven's Poetry says, Carlin, thank you for adding women's cuts to the Trump indictment victory tour shirts. I bought one yesterday. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. No, it's not because they never had a family. So we're going back to this question. Why does the left want to abolish the nuclear family? It is not because they never had a family, guys. A lot of them have children. It's not because of inheritance. That's not why. Nope. Uh, kind of. Kind of. But again, why? Why does collective child raising have to do with the nuclear family? Kind of, but you're not there yet. This is closer. The nuclear family was designed by the bourgeois to oppress working class people. There's more to it. Here's the deal, guys. Oh. The nuclear family is the most basic political unit in our society. They view it as a power struggle. No, that's not why. I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm really not. This is just not why they want to do this. This is a topic, by the way, I've covered extensively for Socialism Saturday. We've watched a lot of this. All right, now everyone that watches Socialism Saturday with me, give your answers. Every one of my regular viewers, I want you guys are getting, like, you're waffling around it, but I want my regular viewers to now give their answers in the chat. So you know this is not just something I'm making up. This is something that I've brought a lot of people on this journey with me. Why does the left want to abolish the nuclear family? Because the nuclear family supports capitalism. It has to do with how they believe the family is how labor is reproduced and taught to be servants of capitalism. Exactly. The family upholds the gender binary. That's another reason. They believe that capitalism created the gender binary, which is perpetuated in the nuclear family. The family is a form of property. It upholds capitalism. Children are also considered to be a form of private property. They believe that they need to liberate children from their parents because children are considered to be private property of their parents. This is all laid out in the Communist Manifesto. Child is the private property of the parents. Whiteness, well, we've already done that. Child, nah, yes, Jamie, really good. Child rearing is free labor for capitalism. One of the arguments that the left has against the nuclear family is that is essentially that private citizens have to pay to raise the next generation of capitalist workers, where what they believe should happen is the state should be paying to raise the next generation of workers. The nuclear family upholds capitalism. Exactly. Because the nuclear family upholds capitalism and the family makes the next generation of workers. They see children and many adults as property. See, guys, there are reasons for this. There are reasons. Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to agree with the left. That's not what this is about. What this is about is that you cannot defeat an enemy that you do not understand. If you don't understand why an enemy is making the move, this is like playing a game of chess, okay? This is like in order to win a game of chess, you have to understand how the different pieces move. If you try to use a knight in the same way that you would use a bishop or a queen, you're going to effing lose. And that's what's going on the right now. When you think that whiteness is about skin color, when it's really about capitalism, you are trying to use a knight in the way that you should be using a bishop, and it doesn't work. Okay? So this is not about agreeing with the left. We do not agree with the left. What this is about is understanding explicitly why they're doing what they're doing, and they will tell you that, and that is why we watch their full form content on my channel, both kind of like midweek stuff like we're doing today, but also we do this on Socialism Saturday every single week. And every single week for Socialism Saturday, we come across these golden nuggets where they say the quiet part out loud. So if I feel like I'm being stubborn to you, it's because I know I'm right. I've done thousands of hours of this. I have damn near lost my fucking mind listening to radical revolutionary socialist content. But I know where these ideas are coming from, and I know I'm right, and I want to teach you them, but you need to be open to understanding them. And you have to be open to understanding why they're doing what they're doing. But you also have to ask, why do they oppose capitalism? Does anyone know? Does anyone want to answer this question? I know the answer to it. They oppose capitalism because they believe that capitalism is an oppressive form of is oppressive because it is entirely driven by surplus and profit motive. And what they want to do is get rid of the profit motive by eliminating the surplus production, by eliminating all private businesses. So all businesses become state run. The state controls the means of production. And what that means is that people are going to have to work a lot less in order to live the good life, because you're going to get rid of all this excess production that needs to happen to create 23 different brands of deodorant. And they believe that the creation of the 23 different brands of deodorant is oppressive to the people doing the creation. They also believe that labor is exploited under capitalism in order to achieve their profit margin, and that the only way to stop exploiting people is to get rid of capitalism entirely. There are a lot of other reasons for it as well. But ultimately, like Bot actually did this. You cannot have equity with capitalism. Really good job, Bot. You cannot have equity, a society grounded in equity, as long as capitalism exists. Because in a capitalist society, which is upheld by individualism, meritocracy, you are always going to have unequal outcomes. Equity is entirely about achieving equal outcomes across race, across gender, across every single identity group, right? You cannot achieve equal outcomes without getting rid of capitalism. It doesn't work. So that's another reason they don't like it. Akshay said, I thought I was red pilled until I started attending Socialism Saturday. That's exactly right. See, a lot of the grapers, they don't think I'm red pilled. They think I'm red pilling now because they're teaching me about the Jewish stuff, and I'm letting them teach me about the Jewish stuff. That's fine. But I don't think you guys are red pilled because you don't understand why the left does what they do. And again, this is no shade. I know people haven't been showing you this, but I'm going to show it to you if you want to listen. All right, guys, so that's what we're doing today. Hang on, we got a super chat. Nuritu says it's like trying to fight when they're a black belt and you're on your first day of karate. That's exactly it. That's exactly right. When you don't know your enemy, it's an impossible fight. You can't win it. And I think ultimately, although we may have our disagreements, and we do have our disagreements, okay? I think that where we can all get behind is that the left cannot be allowed to win. I don't want to live in a socialist utopia. I don't want to live in Nick's monarchy either. That's a different challenge for a different day. Right now, there is no way in this effing universe Nick Fuentes is ever getting his monarchy, all right? It's not going to happen with the way things are structured right now. And so we can argue about the monarchy and the Christian theocracy later, but right now there is a bigger existential threat that we are all agreed on, and we need to come together in order to beat that specific existential threat. And then we can duke it out about whether or not Nick Fuentes is a fucking king or emperor or like whatever the fuck he wants to be. Okay. All right. So let's jump into it, guys. We're going to be watching this keynote from Cheryl Harris. Again, Cheryl Harris is the author of this article, Whiteness as Property. Before we get into it, I do just want to remind everyone, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Another resource you have on the Substack is that you can go into this My Day with the Socialist sections, access the How to Speak Socialist webinar. That's going to have a lot of great clips for you. Pizza Man, I just watched your video for 2 hours and I'm correct. Nope. Pizza Man, you didn't watch the video. I'm sorry, bro. There is no... Groypers, please don't lie to me. Please don't. I'm trying to establish communications that is done in good faith. When you come into my chat and lie to me, I will know it. I am, first of all, intuitive as fuck. Secondly, I know what's in that video you claim to watch, and there is no way in this universe that you actually watched and listened to. Listening is fundamental, Pizza Man. There is no way that you actually listened to that and came away thinking that whiteness is about race. That's not possible, bro. I'm not fucking stupid. Don't try to con me. But if anyone actually does want to watch the webinar, it has about 15... See, what Pizza Man did is Pizza Man found like a 30-second clip where I was explaining. Don't fuck around with me, bro. I will call your... I've been nice to you, but I will call your ass out as soon as you're fucking lying in my chat and trying to be disruptive. What Pizza Man did is he found a 30-second clip of me explaining how the left believes whiteness was created, and now he's identifying that 30-second clip as the end-all be-all of the 2-hour video. I know you took notes because you engaged in confirmation bias and ignored everything that did not say what you wanted it to, bro. You ignored everything that didn't say what you wanted it to. And if you do post your notes on Twitter, I will school you like a little bitch and prove that to you. Oh, Pizza Man. Here's the thing, bro. Here's the thing. There are 2 rules in my chat. Number 1, don't be a dick. I'm allowed to do whatever I want because this is my fucking house. This is not your house. You are not allowed to come in and insult me and lie to me and try to disrupt my chat. And if you do, I will ban your ass so quickly and you will not be invited back. This is like coming into my house and screaming in my face and throwing shit on the wall. It's not going to fucking happen, bro. So number 1, don't be a dick. You will not insult me. You will not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because this is my house and you don't have to be here. Number 2, no whining. When I tell you to cut the bullshit, you cut the fucking bullshit. And if you want to have feelings about that on Twitter, then you will be banned from the chat. And then when I get off this stream today, I will block your ass on Twitter and I will never have to hear from you again. I am engaging with you people in good faith. If you don't want to engage with me in good faith, then we will simply end the conversation, bro. There are thousands of people that I teach this stuff to every single day on YouTube and more importantly on my Substack, which is where my main audience is. My main audience is not groypers. And if you're going to come into my space and fuck things up, then I will simply remove you. And I don't care how many crushes Nick Fuentes has on me or how adorable I think he is. I don't give a fuck. You don't come into my space and fuck up my shit. This is about playing nicely. And if you don't want to listen, then there's no point in having this conversation. So, for people who want to learn, there are resources for it on my Substack, and I'm happy to teach you, and I'm happy to answer questions for you. And you can find all that at Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. All right? Another thing I want to remind people of is this is not my last stream of the day. This is but my first stream of the day because on Tuesday nights I go live at 9:30 with Joshua. And Groypers really aren't going to like this because we do tarot cards. We do astrology. I saw Nick Fuentes' astrology chart earlier today. Ha ha, Groypers. And we're going to talk about what's going on in the world and do some psychic predictions about what's going on with that at 9:30 tonight, which is what we do every Tuesday night on my channel. And Yeah, you can join us for that if you're so inclined. If you want to bring your tarot cards or the devil stuff, just don't bother, man. No one has to come to the show. No one has to use tarot cards. It's fine. You don't have to come if you don't want to, but we enjoy it and it's a great time. And yeah. Teresa says, "Who thinks Carlin would be a great mom?" Well, those kids would be kept in line. I'll tell you that. I'm feeling like Joshua has told me over and over again. He's like, "Carlin, because you don't have kids, you're mothering the internet." And I'm like, now I feel like I'm mothering the grapers, and that's a little weird for me. But whatever. Whatever. All right, guys, let's get into our keynote because this is about an hour and 16 minutes long. We are watching Cheryl Harris talk about whiteness as property, and we're going to be listening to what she's saying. And we're going to pick out pieces of it and we're going to try to break stuff down. If this is your first time watching this sort of content with me, bro, I need you to just relax and I need you to either open your ears and learn. I'm not going to nitpick every single thing right now because we got a schedule we got to be on. I'm happy to answer questions, but let's focus on what we have right in front of us right now. Because if you keep distracting with other things, we're not going to be able to focus. Okay. I'm not suggesting I won't ever answer your question about this. I'm suggesting I won't do it right now because I want to get started with this. All right. So, what I want people to understand is no, you cannot fucking call me mom. Fuck you. Fuck right off. Akshay says, "Pizza Man, you don't have to agree with Carlin with everything, but I promise you, you will learn a lot. The benefits of listening outweigh the benefits of arguing." See? You have to want to learn, guys. If you don't want to learn, I can't teach you. And if you don't want to learn, then what the fuck are you doing here? All right. So if you've never watched this type of content before, this might sound confusing. If you have questions about what Cheryl Harris is saying, put them in the chat. We'll try to answer as best we can. I will try to break it down. We are going to be listening to her keynote at this conference, and this is from 9 effing years ago. Whiteness is Property, a 20-year appraisal. Let's get this party started.
Okay, we are now ready to commence. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devin Carbato, and I'm a...
Where is my volume? My ears just blew out. Holy fucking shit. See, that was my punishment, I think, for yelling at the gripers.
Professor of law here at the law school. And before I say anything...
Sorry, guys. Captions unavailable. Sorry.
Else, I'm hoping that the people who presented at concurrence, if you could please stand up. So anyone who presented at a concurrence, can you please stand up? I wanted to do this because the feature of a concurrence is obviously that we can't all go to all of the concurrence. But I've been hearing about your presentations in the corridors, and I have to say they've broadened the scope and substance of this conference in profound ways. So we really do appreciate your participation. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce the person who really needs no introduction, the person whose work is the basis for our convening, Cheryl Harris. Cheryl Harris is the Rosalind and Arthur Gilbert Foundation Chair in Civil Rights and Civil Liberties here at the School of Law. She is one of the founding faculty members of the Critical Race Studies program and is currently serving as the program's faculty director. She has won numerous awards,
one of the founding members of the Critical Race Studies program at UCLA Law School is who we're about to hear from. So guys, if you don't believe me, we are literally listening to one of the founding people of critical race theory right now. She's going to teach us some stuff. We just have to make sure we're listening to what she's saying and not listening. The key with listening is this, guys. Listening is not about just listening for the parts that back up what you want to believe. We as human beings have to work against our own confirmation bias because the brain wants to find patterns in things. The brain looks for patterns. It looks for things that reinforce the pattern. It ignores things that don't align with the pattern, okay? And so you have to be the one to engage in active listening to really make sure you're not just listening to the parts that you like, you're also listening to the parts that you don't like, because we're working against all of our natural inclinations with how our brain is designed to work. And this is when we're going to get the most information about what's doing. Because or what's happening rather, because these things are, I understand that it's not convenient to hear information that does not back up how you see the world. But we have to listen for subtext. We have to listen for meaning. We have to listen for patterns. We have to listen for how they're actually acting out their concepts. That's what's going to teach us what they're really doing. All right, I'll get you a bingo card. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Hang on. Hang on, hang on. We will go with the original Unwoke bingo for today. There you go.
Including a Distinguished Teaching Award from the ACLU of Southern California. She has a sophisticated and diverse practice background, including serving as a senior legal advisor to the city of Chicago during Harold Washington's administration. She has an enviable publication record, including not one, but 2 publications in the Harvard Law Review. She has engaged in constitutional reform efforts outside of the United States, including her work in the early 90s with South African lawyers.
Hang on. Tyrone says, I would ask you to consider historical shifts. Da, 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 da. The thing is, guys, I don't care about historical shifts. Don't care. I don't care. This is not how I do research. I don't read their literature. I'm more of a, like, it's more of like an ethnographer, like type. It's more like ethnography. What I do with my research is I listen to how they're teaching it. I listen to their classes. I listen to the programs they do for each other. I listen to the lectures they do in coffee shops. I listen to the stuff they're doing online. I go to their in-person meetings. The only thing that I care about is how they are showing up in the world. You can dispute my methodology if you want, but I don't care about a shift that happened 50 years ago. I care about what is happening right now. Or this is 9 years ago, but this is giving us some context. And it's different than a paper. We're not reading Cheryl Harris's paper right now. We're listening to a lecture where they are teaching other people the content. Okay? Yeah, I'm the fucking Jane Goodall of socialism. Exactly.
Vis-a-vis the South African Constitution, and she has maintained an active role in a variety of organizations, including the American Studies Association and the Conference on Black Lawyers. Now, I don't want to mention any of that, which is a little disingenuous since I kind of just did. What I want to do instead is say a few things about the article, Whiteness as Property, as a point of departure to say a few things about the author, Cheryl Harris. Concretely, I want to highlight just 3 features of whiteness as property that bears emphasis, notwithstanding that we've been talking about whiteness as property for 2 days. So
2 days.
The 3 things.
2 days.
Thing 1, the title, Whiteness as Property. Say it with me after 3, the title, Whiteness as Property.
They're literally chanting it, guys. They're literally chanting it. Seriously.
Now, I confess, when I read that title, I instinctively and uncontrollably said, Amen.
Bro, I need you to listen. Listen. What did they just chant? What did they just chant in the lecture hall?
Now, I literally tried to turn to myself and said, Devin, can I get an amen? Amen? It's the kind of title that has you at the title. Thing 2, the introduction. Beautifully, 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 beautifully written. Analytically sharp, theoretically sophisticated, and wonderfully, wonderfully poetic. To read from that introduction is to be existentially moved, not only to a place where racial hierarchy is normative and natural and legal, but to a place where that hierarchy structured and policed the boundaries of identity, the boundaries of rights, the boundaries of work, the boundaries of public and private spaces, the boundaries of intimacy, the boundaries of democracy, indeed, the very boundaries of life and death. I want to read just a little bit from that introduction to put into sharp relief the fact that no secondhand description or redescription of that narrative will do. So imagine I'm reading this in the voice of Cheryl Harris. In the 1930s, Some years after my mother's family became part of the great river of Black migration that flowed north, my Mississippi-born grandmother was confronted with the harsh matter of economic survival for herself and her two daughters. Having separated from my grandfather, who himself was trapped on the fringes of economic marginality, she took one hard look at her choices and presented herself for employment at a major retail store in Chicago's Central Business District. The decision would have been unremarkable for a white woman in similar circumstances, but for my grandmother, it was an act of both great daring and self-denial. For in doing so, she was presenting herself as a white woman. In the parlance of racist...
Let's see, Sam has a question in the chat. Would it be accurate to say socialists want to abolish race? Actually, yeah, it really would be. It really would be, because, I mean, this is something that, like, this, again, like, another reason that I know that this is not about race is at socialist meetings, they don't talk about this stuff at all. They really don't. And so I think that it might seem counterintuitive because it seems like they reinforce racial stereotypes like all the time. But I think in their ideal world, they probably do want to get to a place of abolishing race. And this is not going to make the Groypers happy, because that would mean, like, they want everyone to be every color, essentially. And so in that respect, you know, I guess we are talking about the elimination of white people, but we're also talking about the elimination of Black people, the elimination of brown people, the elimination of Asian people, because they want, I think, everyone to be part of the same ecosystem. So it's not just the elimination of white people, it's the elimination of race entirely. Bro, I need you to listen right now. I need you to stop arguing. I know arguing is your guys' default. I really do, but I need you to listen, okay? So do you guys see the difference between the elimination of white people and the elimination of race? It's exactly what they're trying to do with gender. Socialists don't want to they don't want to eliminate men. They don't want to eliminate women. Socialists want to eliminate all gender. They want everyone to be non-binary. Okay? So it's the same thing. They don't want men to exist. They don't want women to exist. They want everyone to be like this third nebulous option. It's the same thing with race. They don't necessarily want, just Black people to exist or brown people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone is a nebulous like thing that's like a combination of everything. I don't understand the question, Panda Rage. Can you give me a little bit more, please?
America she was passing. Her fair skin, straight hair, and aquiline features had not spared her from a life of sharecropping into which...
Sorry, I missed your super chat, Tate, and that's why the term yes, this is why the term comrade exists. This is exactly right. Comrade is not a term that has any racial connotation, and they're serious about using the term comrade. Comrade is considered like a term of honor in socialist, communist, Marxist circles, and I use those three terms interchangeably because they do. So like comrade does not have a race. Comrade does not have a gender. Comrade does not have a sexual orientation. Comrade is a member of the party, and that is all that matters. That's a really great point, Tate, and I appreciate it. What is his accent? It sounds African. I'm not sure. Thanks, Murphy's Pool. Maybe it's British. I don't know. I don't know where his accent comes from.
She had been born in Anywhere, Nowhere, Mississippi, the outskirts of Yazoo City. She was transgressing boundaries, crossing borders, spinning on margins, traveling between dualities, rigidly bifurcated in...
Hang on. Have I gone over the 1619 project? Oh, God, a long-ass time ago. And I probably should revisit the 1619 project, if I'm honest, because, like, when I reviewed the 1619 project, I wasn't as well-versed in this stuff as I am now. So I probably should revisit it. But it's been a while, Sarah, if I'm honest about it. Panda Rage says, I thought the goal was to have full control. If there is no gender, no race, how do they hold the masses in a divide, or is that only the beginning? So when they achieve, they're not going to achieve their genderless, raceless society for like a long way into their Marxist utopia. That's an ideal. okay? It's going to take a long ass time to get there, but it's kind of like, I know people don't like when I use this example. It's just the best thing I can think of. So, The Handmaid's Tale. I'm talking about the show The Handmaid's Tale, not the book. The book was only about the first season of The Handmaid's Tale, okay? But the show The Handmaid's Tale is really good, and I recommend people watch it. It's like legitimately a good show. And like I'm not going to make some point about Christian theocracy or anything like that, but in The Handmaid's Tale, one of the rules of The Handmaid's Tale in the society that they were creating in Gilead is that women were not allowed to read. Okay. Now, obviously, when they first made the transition from America to Gilead, then women knew how to read. Women had been taught how to read and they just weren't allowed to do it. But like as The Handmaid's Tale goes on and on and on and on, and like they get years into it, they reach a point in The Handmaid's Tale where they are like 10, 15 years into the Gilead society. And when they get 10 to 15 years into it, all of a sudden, you've got a generation of women or girls that have grown up never learning how to read. It's the same thing. It's like, this is not something they're going to achieve overnight. This is something they achieve one generation out, two generations out. But that is the final goal that they're shooting for, but it doesn't happen overnight. Yes, this is correct. Oh, not that one. That wasn't what I wanted to show. Sorry, bot. This is correct. They do want the dictatorship of the proletariat. Absolutely.
Into light, dark, good, bad, white, black. No longer immediately identifiable as Lula's daughter, she could thus enter the white world, albeit on a false passport, not merely passing, but trespassing.
God, we're never going to get through this. Beth says, thank you for the super chat, Beth. The 1619 Project was an essay. It was her perspective. She never claimed it was based on fact. Well, there are many things that were not based on fact in that essay. But it's interesting. There are sections of the 1619 Project that if you replace whiteness with capitalism, it sounds exactly like the Communist Manifesto. I did actually write an article about this on my Substack like maybe a year ago or so. Where there are actually parts of the 1619 Project that if you just replace whiteness with capitalism, it sounds fucking exactly like the Communist Manifesto that was written 150 years ago, which is funny.
Every day, my grandmother rose from her bed in a house in a black enclave in the south side of Chicago, sent her children off to a black school, boarded a bus full of black passengers, and rode to work. Each evening, my grandmother, tired and worn, retraced her steps home,
I'm turning up the volume a little
laid
bit.
aside her mask, and re-entered herself. She left the job some years later, finding the strain too much.
No, we do not see race as a social construct, but they do. They do. Like, this is something I keep hearing from the Groypers. They keep accusing me of seeing race as a social construct. That's because you guys are using right-wing talking points and you think you're trying to own me, but you're not listening is the problem. So again, Groypers, can you please, please, please just focus on what's being said right now? Because we're never going to get through this if I keep having to answer the same questions over and over again. I do not believe that race is a social construct. I don't think you believe that race is a social construct, but they do. I don't believe gender is a social construct. I don't believe you believe gender is a social construct, but they do. This is about understanding their perspective.
To bear. Now, that reading, which is a redaction of the actual introduction, I'm sure I performed some violence with that redaction, was not nearly in the kind of spoken word rhetorical form that it really deserves. I simply want to say that no secondhand description really can capture that. You have to read it, stay with it, or better yet, ask Cheryl Harris to read it to you. Thing 3, the mobilization of the master's tools. So this is a point about Cheryl's article that I think has not been fully articulated. She takes on traditional property theorists. In this respect, Jerry Kong was right to say yesterday that the metaphor of whiteness as property in the article Whiteness as Property is deeply powerful, rhetorically, normatively, theoretically, doctrinally. Peggy Radin was also right to say, though, that the things we attribute to property, what we might call its definitional features, are entailments of whiteness. And this is a point that Cheryl Harris makes in the piece and that you all with me are going to underscore in the moment. So I'm going to say something like, property theorists say whiteness as property is X, and you are going to say Cheryl Harris says whiteness is X. There's going to be a call and response moment, in other words, and I'm going to be calling, you're not going to be called without your response. I'm in it. So here's what I have in mind. So property embraces things to which a person may attach value. Cheryl Harris says, property law theory says that property includes the right to exclude. Cheryl Harris says, all right. Property is being able to draw on the advantage of a thing possessed.
So socialism is a cult. I just hope everyone's clear on that. What we're seeing right now is a religious exercise. This is a ritual. This is like symbolic of the cult. It's indoctrinating people into the cult if they're not a part of the cult already. But this is a fucking cult.
You're doing well. 2 more. Property is a thing you can use and enjoy. Finally, property includes having entitlements legitimized in law. All right. So I could go on. The point I mean to make here is that she makes a very strong theoretical argument about what whiteness is based on what the man says whiteness is. And it's important to recognize that that's a part of our argument. So let's switch from the article to the woman behind it. I will not, in the limited time that I have, try to capture what a brilliant and broad-ranging scholar Cheryl Harris is, except to say parenthetically that we're talking about her work on whiteness as property, but we could be talking about her other work as well. She's written, I mean, the slide doesn't quite capture it. She's done stuff on legal ideology, intersectionality, employment discrimination, among other areas of law. All I want to say about that body of work is A, it's there, B, it's terrific, and C, you should read it. So what I want to do in the limited time that I have now, if you'll indulge me, is just say a few things about how crucial Cheryl has been to the institutional and intellectual life of the law school since she joined the faculty. It's no accident that the only law school in the country with a joint degree program in law and African-American studies is a law school on whose faculty Cheryl Harris sits.
Are you
It's no
kidding me?
accident that the only law school
Wow,
in the country
I
with a
didn't know
critical
that.
race studies program is a law faculty on which Cheryl Harris sits. Now, Cheryl Harris helped to conceptualize and was a driving force behind both institutionalizations. More generally, our institutional citizenship has been exemplary. In terms of committees, you name it, she has served on it. I won't bore you with the list, except to say that recently we decided at the law school that we needed an ad hoc committee on ad hoc committees. I kid you, Laura Gomez is my vice dean. She will attest to this.
Well, it's funny that you say this, Sarah. Sarah says the only thing I say amen to is the anthem is the Pledge of Allegiance. So the Pledge of Allegiance is also indoctrination. I hope people understand this. Like, getting children to recite the Pledge of Allegiance every single day in school is just another form of indoctrination. Like, a lot of libertarians don't believe we should be doing that. I don't believe we should be doing that. So and you're welcome to disagree with me on that. I just want to point that out, that like indoctrination and cult-like rituals are not actually exclusive to the left. The right does them too. Like, for example, where did I see it? Like, for example, with the Groypers are very proud of their cult of Nick Fuentes, in which they would, I'm not going to say those words because I know what they mean, but you guys can look up RKD and you'll find out what it means quite quickly. Or you can put it in the chat, VIP, but I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it on stream.
said we need, I mean, I think we were competing with the university, which has a committee on committees at the universities. At any rate, once we said we needed this ad hoc committee on committees, we also said immediately that we need Cheryl Harris to serve on it. Cheryl, we've had our first meeting? Yes, we did. And better you than me is all I would say. With respect to university services, it's actually the same thing. She's currently serving as the interim chair of African American Studies. And I know that my colleagues in African American Studies are saying, I hope she stays, to which I say, get in bloody line. Wait your turn. With respect to mentoring and teaching, she's absolutely revered by her students. So here are some of the things that students say about her directly from the source, the teaching evaluations. She's inspiring, charismatic, absolutely brilliant, not that unapproachable, arrogant type of brilliant. An excellent professor, truly a CRT expert. I could not imagine taking this course, CRT, from anyone else, which is to say the rest of us are chump change. Based on my experience at UCLA, I would have to say that Professor Harris is one of the best professors I have ever had. Another student in that same class disagreed, noting that Professor Harris is, quote unquote, definitely the best professor I have ever had. Another, she is the authority on constitutional law. Another still, this is more than a class. What does that mean? This is more than a class. It's a class. According to another student, she made the information as interesting as it could be, given the fact that we spent a lot of time talking about what old dead white guys had to say 200 years ago. Here's another. I loved this course. Another, I love this course, exclamation mark. Another still, I really love this course. I've never seen so many expressions of
no, VIP is lying about what RKD means. This is what it means. This is what it means. Don't lie to my chat, VIP. I will call you on that bullshit right quickly.
Love in her teaching evaluations, I have to say. And then there were these adjectives, these one-word adjectives that read as though they were applicable to a blockbuster movie. We might call this movie Whiteness's Property. I mean, let's say this is the poster for it. Cheryl, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure why it's rated R. Something's still missing. So let's say it's starring Jerry Khan. So here's what I mean. So you read the teaching evaluations and you see things like fantastic, exciting, phenomenal, brilliant, awesome, terrific. I mean, as I read these evaluations, I thought I might see 2 thumbs up, way up. I didn't quite. 2 more comments and then I will stop. Professor Harris looks unfazed by even some of the most offensive opinions we read. She doesn't even blink when students say things that are, shall we say, a little out of touch. Now, we're very familiar with this. We call it her poker face, and it's absolutely on display in faculty meetings. I won't say anything.
Oh, can you imagine how fucking pissed Autumn is that the Groypers are now hanging out here? Autumn was our pet socialist for a while. She was like hanging out on the chair, like real socialist. And we let her kind of get away with a lot of shit. And then I got sick of her one day and I banned her and her 87 sock accounts. But can you guys imagine how pissed off Autumn is right now? That's actually kind of hilarious. Not to be confused with Autumn Groyper, which is Nick Fuentes' Twitter name. This was Autumn Leaves. Not to be confused with Autumn Groyper.
More. The final comment, have you ever...
Hang on, I got a super chat coming in from Milo. Milo says, how do we know Jesus was not a Marxist? He actually fed people. Oh, that's funny, Milo. Thank you for the joke. I appreciate it. No, fake Autumn is banned as well. No more fucking... Unless it's Autumn Groyper. Autumn Groyper can come in the chat if he wants to. Fake Autumn cannot come in the chat.
Seen Cirque du Soleil, how they move their bodies in all these amazing and unimaginable way. Professor Harris does this every class with her body. Not with her body, rather, but with her mind.
Wow.
Maybe you take with your body too. For all these reasons, Cheryl, you are our Person of the Year. I want to presume to speak for all of us when I channel Pharrell and say that we are happy. Clap your hands because we know your work always speaks the truth, because we're happy. Clap your hands because you're grounded in our diasporic roots, because we're happy. Clap your hands. Yes, we will. Not to bring this event to a close, clap your hands because you'll always be our CRS Rose. Thank you.
This whole intro is like seriously the worship of a patron saint of something. It's so ritualistic, it's crazy.
Ooh. So it was suggested that when I was sort of hyperventilating outside about speaking to you all, that maybe I should do an interpretive dance. So I guess here we are. It really risks parody to start with a long list of thank yous. It's like a bad award show. But I've been sort of overwhelmed by the love and how fortunate I am to be the beneficiary of this kind of tribute while I'm still in this world. And so I have to say thank you. I have to start with Jasleen for her dedication and her skill for being slightly OCD, which is required for this job. Maybe not so slightly, but you know what I mean. To Rusty, who has been unflappable, even in the face of impossible demands. Many of you have interacted with him. That's how you arrived here. And I just want to thank him. He's been exemplary. Ditto for Sumit Bod, who is here. To all of my colleagues who have provided support, to all the speakers who have given that most precious resource of time, to all the students and the staff who have done such amazing hours of invisible work. Thank you for giving me this honor. Thank you for reading my work, and thank you for doing the work that inspires me. Thank you to my students, current and former, for letting me teach and for letting me learn from you. And thank you to my colleagues, old and new, who are colleagues and so much more, the ones who believe in my intentions, excuse my failings, who listen to my rants, who've been in the
God,
trenches,
this is
intellectual
crazy.
and
Can you get
political,
into it,
who
please?
fought with me and for me,
Can you
who've been
say
the
something of
architects of my
value?
intellectual home, and the members
This is
of
the
my
trouble with
extended
watching long
family,
form content.
who's
We have
kept
to
me
sit through a lot
sane,
of this
or
bullshit.
at least reasonably so. To my brother from another mother, Devin. To Kim and to Laura, my sisters-in-law, who have held my hand, particularly over this talk.
Hang on, just to be really clear, in case anyone is confused, this is not Nick. This is fucking Bot, who's fucking... Bot, please don't do this. Come on. This is not... This is just... This is my community fucking around with your community, okay?
When I confess my fears that I might disappoint you all, the ones who I never want to let down. For managing the contradiction between joy and terror. To Jerry, to Jyoti, to Noah, to Asla, to Hiroshi, to Sharad, thank you. To my mentors and comrades in arms, those present and those gone on, thank you to my family.
She is giving a
to my
fucking
partner,
Oscar.
Wisteria,
Like,
who I love
you
and
would have thought
depend
this
on
was
more
this
than
is
I
just
can
a
say.
conference. This is not
To
like
my
an
son,
award or
Tebe,
anything.
cultural worker and student of life, whose growth and insights inspire me. 1,000 kisses. Thank you to my brothers, my niece, my nephews, my sisters, my friends, my whole family network who have let me be distracted and inconsistent in my attention, who've put up with crazy schedules, short tempers, mad dashes, and all the rest. You know the real deal, and I thank you. 20 years ago, I wrote about the interface of juridical, political, and social conceptions of race and property. I was struck by how race and property as conceived in American law shared a common conceptual nucleus of a right to exclude others. This insight emerged out of a particular historical moment in which
I want to just go back and listen to that part again.
And I thank you.
She's going to say that race and property were conceived in the same way, okay?
20 years ago, I wrote about the interface of juridical, political, and social conceptions of race and property. I was struck by how race and property, as conceived in American law, shared a common conceptual nucleus of a right to exclude others.
Race and property were conceived in American law of a common perceptual nucleus of how to exclude others. She's saying that they're interchangeable. Race and property are interchangeable.
This insight emerged out of a particular historical moment in which colorblindness was the ascendant racial logic and the liberalization of markets was the consensus economic strategy. This gave a particular form to debates about enduring racial inequality as well as the traditional liberal vision of property and ownership. Looking back, there were multiple points of departure that led me there, both micro-personal and macro-political, and I'll try to comment on that here. Looking forward, I'll try to suggest something about continuities and discontinuities, about the ways in which changing conceptions of race and property produce new forms and familiar patterns. And I'm going to try to do so in 3 chapters and a coda. First, a person.
Well, no, Tayton, it's not that they didn't like Martin Luther King. It's not that they didn't like him. It's that they think that if he hadn't been assassinated, he would have gone further.
Personal and political genealogy. Second, on evolutions, what happened with property and what happened with race. And 3, how forms of whiteness as property are operating under post-racialism. And I particularly want to point to a debate regarding race and class, I think is a location where we can really see this emerging. So first chapter, into the legal academy. I had become a lawyer to pursue racial justice, but there were very few want ads out there that said racial justice advocate wanted. So I went in search of meaningful work in obvious and unobvious places. By 1984, I landed in the Office of Legal Counsel under the first Black and first progressive mayor of the city of Chicago, Harold Washington, who was elected in 1983. The democratic machine, which had exercised virtually uncontested control over the political and economic structure of the city, was in shock, but not so much in shock that it did not quickly form a majority voting bloc of 29 of all white and 1 Latinos out of the 50 council seats and voted themselves in control of all the committees of the council. They racially demonized him. They attacked his character. They threw up roadblock after roadblock. They voted down all of his proposals and his nominees. Does this sound familiar?
All right, we are going to ask the chat. I'm not going to answer this question from BIP Tundra because he's trying to do another gotcha. Chat, how would you characterize Cheryl Harris's definition of racism? What is the chat? I'm not going to answer this. What does the chat say? What is Cheryl Harris's definition of racism? Unequity? Yep. I would go with that. Racism is capitalism, which means inequity. Yep. Everything that isn't equal is caused by racism. Power imbalance, which is inequity. Capitalism. Racism equals capitalism. Capitalism. Whiteness equals capitalism. Inequity. Capitalism. 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 Property owners. All of these guys, when we're talking about the far left, everything that I'm displaying on the screen now, they're different variations on exactly the same thing. But you're going to notice here that no one's saying skin color. She's talking about it as property ownership, social hierarchy, lack of access to capitalism, feeding into capitalism, oppression. Consistent to the themes, we have always seen equity. Yes. Capitalism bad. Capitalism is racism. Property, the conflict between the property owners and the workers. Slavery, not equality. Not equality. I don't agree with that one. Any disparity is going to mean equity, not equity. Exactly. I knew you were going to get it. I knew it was just a typo or something. You guys are getting it. Well, you can declare that if you want, but my point is that you just got a metric ton of answers from people who have been watching this content with me for a while. I didn't brainwash them. I didn't tell them what to say. Let's continue.
There was legislative gridlock, and Chicago became known as Beirut by the lake. These legendary fights inspired a comedian, Aaron Freeman, to craft a riff off of Star Wars, Council Wars, with Washington as Luke Skywalker and the opposition as Darth Vader. The city's first Black corporation counsel, who was himself a former well-known civil rights attorney, began recruiting a new generations of lawyers to the project of reform, and that's when I showed up at the city's law department. It was a wild ride, but things began to change when Washington's Progressive Coalition brought a successful voting rights suit over the racial gerrymandering of council districts in the prior election. In 1986, under the newly drawn districts, the Progressive Black-led Alliance was able to elect new aldermen, producing a 25-25 split with the mayor voting to break a tie. That ended the council wars, and with the mayor's reelection in February of 1987, there was tremendous hope. Washington famously argued that he had danced on the grave of the Democratic machine and it was dead, dead, dead.
Hang on, I got a super chat from Tayton. Tayton says, racism to them is any system of capitalism because it's oppressive and competitive. Yes, correct. Systemic racism is specifically a reference to the capitalist system. Correct. So the only way that we will ever achieve an anti-racist society is to eliminate capitalism. We've watched presentations on this channel that specifically say in the fucking thumbnail, anti-racism means anti-capitalism. The only way that we will ever achieve a society built on equity, which is getting rid of systemic racism, is to eliminate capitalism. It doesn't work otherwise, guys.
But we were unprepared for what happened next. In November of 1987, he died in his office of a massive.
Okay. VIP Tundra says he's not asking a gotcha question. So how would an individual not be racist, assuming that definition? You would be. You would be. Everyone is. These people think that everyone is racist. Literally. I mean, this is Robin DiAngelo does this whole confession tour where I am a racist white lady. I am a racist. Robin DiAngelo says Robin DiAngelo has literally written self-actualizing books in which she says that she's a racist. But they don't mean it in the same way that you do, because they're not talking about skin color. They're talking about inequity. They're talking about the system, but they literally think that color blindness is bad. They think that color blindness is wrong. So they believe in looking at people based on the color of their skin. The left is not against judging people based on the color of their skin. They do it all the time. They just have a different definition of racism than you do.
Heart attack. A split erupted over who would succeed him, and with two Black aldermen, one from the old guard and the other supported by the Washington Progressive Coalition, competing for the votes of the council to temporarily replace him until a new election could be held. In fact, within this struggle, key sectors of the Black political leadership that had been brought to power by a Black-led Democratic insurgency sought reconciliation with the mainstream Democratic Party. At an all-night session in the city council, we as lawyers for the city no longer clearly had a client, and thus attempted to argue for adjournment that would allow some Democratic input. But with City Hall surrounded by thousands of protesters from...
Hang on. Rottweiler says the low information idiots on both sides think they're talking about racism as we know it. I'm gonna refrain. Okay, listen, I think I don't blame you for calling them low information idiots, Rottweiler. I really don't. I think probably a week ago I would have done the same thing. I'm really trying, though, to turn over a new leaf and acknowledge the fact that a lot of the groypers who have joined us today who they have not been exposed to this information. They haven't had anyone teach them this. They've been taught this by people who, quite frankly, were irresponsible in what they were doing. And so I don't want to call them low information idiots. When you don't know something, you don't know it. When you haven't been exposed to information, there's no possible way you can know it. So hopefully exposing them to a different perspective helps them to judge the situation differently. And if it doesn't, then we're at least learning some stuff, you know?
From the Washington Coalition, the white-led opposition prevailed. Their candidate was installed as mayor in a hurried ceremony in a parking lot far from the raging crowd. The next election reproduced this split within the Black electorate. The upshot was that by the next election, the old political regime in the city, the remnants of the Daley machine, were updated and reinstalled, from Boss Daley the father to Boss Daley the son, from the Democratic machine to the Democratic Leadership Council. This reconciliation ultimately laid critical groundwork for the election of Barack Obama, first as senator and then as president. I could not, of course, foresee all of that then. What I saw was the shrinking ground for progressive work.
Hang on. Kai says, I get the impression that these socialists are the epitome of city folks that have been completely detached from the reality of survival in nature. In some respects, yes, but I don't want to give anyone the impression that this is only happening in cities. At the socialism conference that I went undercover at like a month and a half ago, they literally had entire sessions about how they're recruiting in the Deep South and how they're organizing in the Deep South. There was a whole contingent from Oklahoma there. There was a whole contingent from South Dakota there. There was like there were socialist groups from very red states and very red areas all over the country. So I think it's not correct to say this is all just the city folk, although I understand why you think that. These people are everywhere and they're planning to recruit and organize in red areas specifically because they see an opportunity. Beth, thank you for the super chat. You can make the claim my friend did when we were discussing there was no obvious racism where we worked back in 92. She said that just because we didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't exist. There's a solid argument. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I think it was also just a different time. But Beth, I'm going to think about that one. I do appreciate the super chat as always. Thank you. And then Zertleman 2000, thank you for the super chat. Utilizing the alternative definition of racism allows them to make racial judgments with no cognitive dissonance. I'm pausing because I think you might be right about that, but I also don't think that they had cognitive dissonance to begin with, is the thing. So I'm going to think about that. I think you might be right on one hand, but I also think it's like it's right. It's like technically correct, but it's also not in that I'm not sure that's the way their psychology was working in the first place. But thank you for giving me something to think about. I do appreciate it.
Work. Moreover, there was a need to connect to the global struggle, and it seemed manifest. As my longtime mentor, Margaret Burnham, and my new one, Asla Bali, have pointed out, there's a deep interconnectedness between the racial logic of subordination, colonialism, and occupation.
Colonialism and
involved in
occupation.
solidarity work.
We saw on Socialism Saturday this past week, they literally said that Black Lives Matter would not have happened without Palestine. Okay? Colonialization means the taking of property, in theory, public property, and privatizing it under the oppressive form of capitalism. Decolonization, which is what these people would argue we're seeing in Palestine right now, is the taking back of the property that was privatized under the oppressive regime of capitalism and making it part of the collective again. So she's referencing, like, anytime you hear the terms decolonization or colonization, they're referencing the idea of property. So if racism is inequity on an individual scale, the only way for an individual not to be racist would be a society with absolutely no hierarchy. Yes. Yes. Okay. So either everyone is racist or everyone isn't. Well, so here's the thing though. Like we talked about this earlier at the beginning, where ultimately their big goal, and we're talking about like, several generations from now, a lot after we are all dead, okay? Their big goal is they want to eliminate race entirely. They don't want race to exist. No race, not white, not black, no race to exist, okay? They also don't want gender to exist. These people believe that the only way that we will achieve gender equity is if we abolish all gender and everyone is non-binary. So you're kind of correct in that a society built on equity is in theory a non-hierarchical society. But like I understand this takes a little bit of imagination to wrap your head around. They don't want race to exist at all. It's not just about white people, it's about all race. I hope that makes sense. Or at least think about it. I know that this is like what these people do is they conceptualize things that are hard for us to wrap our heads around because they're not part of our experience, okay? We live in a world where, yes, of course we can see if someone is white or black or brown or whatever. So you have to think a little abstractly on this one.
In particular, in connection with South Africa and with Israel-Palestine. And the South African divestment movement was in full force, and my work with progressive lawyers organizations put me in the middle of those debates.
Hang on. What about nationality? These people are globalists at the end of the day. Now, they're not the same as the WEF. The WEF and these people are not the same. But these people don't believe that borders should exist. They don't believe that countries should exist. They believe that we are all part of the one race, the human race. So yeah, that would go for nationality too. They don't want different nationalities to exist. They don't want different countries to exist.
And protest, and into a heady mix of music, poetry, and the art of resistance. Briefs and analysis for my work by day, and poetry and journalism by night. I thought perhaps there might be a way to center the intellectual project and bring my various selves together. And particularly so as a door was closing locally, I applied to an LLM program in international human rights law at the London School and got accepted. Just as I was trying to figure out how to pay for tuition and living expenses in London, several of my mentors, including Haywood Burns, one of the legal visionaries of our time, re-engaged me about teaching law, and it was a fortuitous moment to do so. By 1990, critical race theory had emerged as a trenchant intervention that contradicted the standard liberal account that racism was antithetical to the American legal system. Building from the liberatory politics of the 60s and 70s, CRT had exploded that myth, demonstrating the role of law in constituting the racial regime. Gen 1, Matsuda, Lawrence, Crenshaw, Gotanda, Roberts, Thomas, that would be Kendall, not Clarence.
They fucking hate Clarence Thomas.
Interventions that had been foreshadowed in Derek Bell's.
Why do they hate Clarence Thomas? If this is just about skin color, why do these people hate Clarence Thomas so much? It's the same reason why they hate Larry Elder. By the way, gripers, it's the same reason they hate Kanye West. Why do they hate Clarence Thomas so much? Clarence Thomas is really black, man. Why do they hate him? Why do they believe that Clarence Thomas is white? Clarence Thomas is really fucking black. Why do they believe he's white? Because he's the black face of white supremacy. Why is he the black face of white supremacy? Because he's a capitalist, motherfucker. Panda Rage, I'm about to throw something really abstract at you, but ultimately, they want all children to be born via surrogacy. And if you think they're not doing gene manipulation when they're birthing all children via surrogacy to get rid of anything like an abstract blue eye or something like that, I would say that's probably wrong. Now, that's an advanced thing. I'm not going to go into abolish the family bullshit right now. That's like next level fucking lunacy. But they don't want, the society that they're trying to create will lend very easily to gene therapy to get rid of whatever they want. Let's just suffice it at that.
Earlier groundbreaking work, and were manifest in a set of contestations in which he was implicated. In 1989, Bell's protest over Harvard Law School's failure to hire women of color had resulted in student unrest and ultimately his departure from the school. This conflict followed the earlier fight over Bell's replacement when he took the post as dean at another school. When Bell had left on that prior occasion, Harvard, applying neutral standards of merit, could not locate a qualified person of color in the country to take his place to teach a course on race, racism, and American law. This became one of the sites of struggle out of which CRT emerged. How could the nearly all white and male
if Tim Pool did this, Tim Pool is a fucking moron.
Of fair and neutral institutional practices? Was there really only one exceptional one? One per generation? Maybe one every other generation? This interrogation produced many slips, dodges, anxieties, denials, evasions, and like the 7 stages of grief, finally, in some instances, a begrudging acceptance that the contradiction between inclusion and fairness and the de facto segregation.
Hey, look at this. This has been very helpful. I do appreciate it. This is why we do this. This is why we listen to them. And I know we're chatting more in the chat right now than we are listening to Cheryl Harris. But I promise you, like, Cheryl Harris is going to say some crazy shit in this. And we do actually need to listen to her. But, like, I appreciate people asking questions. And I want to try to answer them in good faith. And I appreciate that you have found it helpful so far. VIP Tundra, I understand it's about abolishing all attributes that would result in differing outcomes. That's how they achieve their perfect society based on equity. So because blank slate theory has proven false, they want, well, so, okay. I want to be clear about the gene therapy stuff. They absolutely, well, not all, there is a branch of these people, and again, this is getting into abolish the family dystopia, which is the most dystopian aspect of the entire thing. There is a branch of these people who want all children born via surrogacy. They don't want, remember, they don't want the nuclear family to exist because the nuclear family upholds capitalism. So how are you propagating the species? Well, you got to think like dystopian movies, man. Brave New World, all children born via surrogacy raised by the state. Logan's Run, all children born via surrogacy raised by the state. They're actively there was a there I mean they're actively trying to figure out this birthing pod thing. Just Google birthing pods, it'll come right up. They're actively trying to figure out how to do this. But there was an article in a medical journal, what, like 8 months, 6 8 months ago. I wrote about it on the Substack. They're actively trying to figure out, I shit you not, how to gestate babies in the bodies of brain dead people, not just women, men too. They're pretty sure they can do it. And so if they're already trying to figure out how to get all children born via surrogacy, can we just be honest and say it's like a hop, skip, and a jump away to gene therapy? Because it's like, if they just let biology occur naturally, they're not going to get their perfect society built on equity. So this is just a theory I have. I'm not saying I've heard them talk about this a lot or anything. I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense to me that they can achieve their perfect, like, genderless, like, society based purely with surrogacy. They're going to have to do gene therapy to, like, manipulate people. And if they're already putting the state in charge of the birthing of all people anyway, then do we really think that's out of like the realm of possibility? Am I wrong? Tim Pool is so full of shit. No one should ever listen to Tim Pool again. I'm sorry. If Tim Pool really believes they're winning the culture war, he is so full of shit. It's not even funny. Tim Pool does not understand institutional versus political power. No, he does not. Ugh. Tim Pool. Tim Pool is one of the reasons I have to do all these fucking streams to unteach people things that Tim Pool has wrongly taught them. Anyway, let's keep going.
Of the academy could not just be managed rhetorically. Like many of my cohort, I entered the legal academy as a beneficiary of that challenge. So in 1990, I started as the first tenure track person of color on the faculty at Chicago Kent College of Law. I was not just the new kid on the block. I was what John Calmore called an integration warrior. Definitely on Front Street. You all have been there. As a new professor, I felt compelled to read the entire opinion in all the cases that I assigned. It was an eye-opening introduction to the politics of case selection and editing in constructing the legal canon. Among the cases I read was Plessy, which appeared fleetingly in textbooks as the precursor to Brown. Decided in 1896, Plessy upheld Louisiana's recently enacted law that segregated public transportation and held that it was consistent with equal protection because it treated blacks and whites equally in its prohibition. As Harlan Dissents pointed out, segregation did nothing of the sort. Separate but equal was a fiction. The racial boundary structured into the train car installed a racial caste system, one that the court ratified. Harlan's invocation of colorblindness rejected that form of racial formalism, but assumed that because white superiority was a given, the crude demarcations of the Separate Car Act were unnecessary. The casebook ended the story with Brown, which overturned Plessy 60 years later. This presumptively cured the injury that Plessy inflicted, a racial progress narrative of redemption and self-correction. What I discovered upon reading Plessy unedited was that the equal protection question, whether segregation violated the Constitution, was not the only issue. The case described Plessy as 7/8 white and 1/8 black, with the
VIP Tundra says, but they're not claiming to be statists. I'm not naive. I know that communism always turns into statism, but are they seeking a stateless like you? Okay, so this is actually a good question because a lot of these people do claim to be anarchists, but they're not. And the reason I know that is what we've done is, like, sometimes we'll like stream snipe socialists when they're doing like live presentations so we can go into their chat and like ask them questions, and we don't ask bullshit questions. We ask them questions to try to get them to reveal themselves and to like to say the quiet part out loud, essentially. And so we've actually done this where we'll go into like their chats when they're talking about this stuff and we ask them, like, who makes the decisions in your so-called stateless society? Who makes the decisions? And the answer is always the community. The community. There's going to be some governing thing in the community. So They don't actually, I mean, what it actually is it's like it's like in 1984. Think about, like, in 1984, you have the proles who are not in the party, and then you have, like, the workers, like Winston, who's in the party and he's wearing the blue jumpsuit, and then you have the upper party people, and I forget their proper name in the book, but, like, you have the more elite party people who have the dark blue jumpsuit, and those are the people making the decisions. It's like that's kind of what we're talking about. So they may perceive it's a stateless society, but the party, the comrades, the party becomes the state. It's like it was like in the USSR before the USSR fell, right? It's like there were different levels of, like, comrade. There were different levels of, like, that whole structure. Same thing here.
A mixture of black blood not being discernible in him. Plessy's phenotype, the fact that he looked white, allowed his lawyers to argue that the conductor's decision to exclude him from the first-class so-called ladies' car because he was not white deprived him of the reputation of being regarded as white, and this reputational interest was a valuable property that could not be taken without due process, a standard that was violated by the conductor's standardless determination. It's very difficult to actually find a picture of Homer Plessy. What I'm giving you here is a picture of Rudolph Desnes, who was the head of the Citizens Committee that was involved in that lawsuit. It's also important to note that the racial boundary on the train car was actually structured through a gendered line. That is, the earliest challenges to the law were brought by Black women who pointed out the logical inconsistency that as Black women, they were barred from the ladies' car, while if they were accompanying a white child as a nurse, they were permitted to stay. Ida B. Wells was one of those women. Her account of her refusal to leave is legendary. She says, "I refused, saying that I was in the ladies' car. I proposed to stay. The conductor tried to drag me out of my seat."
If you're having a hard time getting your head around the idea, that's okay, because what we're asking you to do is think in a completely abstract way. And especially a lot of people on the right, they have trouble thinking in an abstract way because it's not something, no offense conservatives, it's not something that you're good at. You're good at some things, you're not good at this. So it's okay if you're having a hard time wrapping your head around the idea. It's not you, it's them, all right? Just keep noodling it. Keep like think about the easiest way to think about this is, again, dystopian movies. Go watch 1984. Go watch Brave New World. There's a Brave New World like horrible like made for TV movie that I think came out in 1981, but it'll help you understand this. Go watch Fahrenheit 451. Go watch Logan's Run. Go watch Demolition Man, for crying out loud. In Demolition Man, they got rid of the nuclear family. You had to get like approval to have kids from the state. And then it was like all gene therapied and all that crap. So like the very best way to kind of start to wrap your heads around it is to think of some like relevant pop culture. Animal Farm. Go watch Animal Farm, you know? But that'll help you to kind of like have some visualization of what we're talking about. They're not exact. Oh god, you're an ex-Marxist. Ex-Marxists sometimes don't know the ideology. Like it depends on how into it you were, to be honest. But again, like just go watch some dystopian movies. Don't watch the TV series. That was awful. Like, I mean, I guess some aspects of it are right, but like maybe I need to go back and watch it again, but like I didn't think that that was good. I was thinking like I don't know what the equalizer is. Equilibrium though. Equilibrium is a society built on equity. Go watch The Giver. The Giver is all about abolish the family. There are tons. I should make a dystopian movie list. There are tons of dystopian movies that demonstrate a lot of these things.
See, but the moment he caught hold of my arm, I fastened my teeth in the back of his hand. I braced my feet against the seat in front and was holding the back, and as he had already been bitten badly, he didn't try it again by himself. He went forward and got the baggageman and another man, and of course they succeeded in dragging me out. She won her case in the lower court, but it was reversed on appeal. I say that to say that all of the early litigation on this was actually brought by Black women. Plessy's property argument did not win, of course. Whether whiteness was marked by a preponderance of white blood, as in Ohio, or less liberally excluding from whiteness those who had more than 1/8 Black blood, or any drop of Black blood, as in Mississippi, where my grandmother was born, the inherent asymmetry under which Black blood rendered one Black, but white blood did not render one white, revealed that exclusivity and domination were tied. Plessy's argument challenged the notion that the rules of racial assignment were natural, pre-political, and neutral. This was not a rule of biology, but a rule of power. And under it, Blackness not only marked enslavement, but the bodies that are enslavable and available for subordination. Rereading Plessy allowed me to uncover the central role of law in constructing racial identity and legitimating white racial dominance through the materiality of property. This was accomplished through slavery's appropriation of labor and property, segregation and its aftermath, the prerequisite cases and naturalization in which whiteness was tethered to citizenship, and through settler colonialism in which the occupation and seizure of indigenous land laid the foundation for the white nation. Rights and property, things, money, land, and ultimately human beings were contingent on and intertwined with conception of race. As Du Bois described in Black Reconstruction, even when white privilege did not yield direct economic benefits for the white working class in the form of money, the wages of whiteness were still available as, quote, a public and psychological wage.
That backs up right there the idea that white privilege does not mean privilege because of your skin color. White privilege means beneficiary of capitalism. Does everyone understand that? Beneficiary of capitalism.
In this way, whiteness was propertized, to borrow from Peggy.
Whiteness was propertized.
I argue that despite Brown and the legal and policy interventions that sought to disrupt patterns of racial subordination, the valorization of whiteness as a form of property continued in the modern era, and in this sense, the property interest in whiteness that Plessy invoked was doctrinally preserved. This was manifest in the way in which white privilege functions as the background assumption regarding the baseline in disputes over anti-discrimination remedies. As Noah Zatz so lucidly demonstrated the other night, I could have chosen any standard Title VII disparate treatment case to illustrate this problem of the baseline, but I chose the court's affirmative action jurisprudence to show the problematic logic in treating as equivalent the segregative practices and their consequences and the remedial interventions designed to disrupt them. This reifies white racial privilege as a legitimate and neutral baseline that is protected in law, and to the extent that affirmative action exposed this hierarchy and carried with it a redistributive potential, it was in the crosshairs. In thinking about the multiple ways in which whiteness functioned, my grandmother's story came to me as illuminating something important about white supremacy and the role of law in its entrenchment. Alma's story of boundary crossing, exclusion, subversion, racial trespass.
Yeah, see, this is a problem, and this is why conservatives are getting their ass so thoroughly kicked by the left, because the left thinks abstractly, whereas conservatives think in black and white. This is why the left is so much better at creating culture than conservatives, because the left contributes to the arts, they contribute to music, they create things, they invent things, they throw like crazy creative ideas out there, and hopefully something sticks, you know? And so like conservatives suck at this. Like the Daily Wire right now is remaking fucking Snow White. Can they come up with an original story, please? Conservatives suck at this because they're trying to like get the left to like get themselves into some sort of like box that they can grapple with internally, and the left is never going to do that. The left does not play by your rule. You're trying to get, and I'm not saying you specifically, I'm saying conservatives in general, you're trying to get the left to play by your set of rules. The left has not agreed to your set of rules. They only agree to their own rules, and they can change the rules of the game at any time. And so this is even more like why it's important to learn why they do what they do, because if you don't understand why they're doing what they do, then you can't predict their next move, because it seems like they're all over the place, right? They're making these crazy things, and you're very linear thinkers. Okay? You guys think in straight lines. The left doesn't fucking think in straight lines. They think in fucking zigzags. Okay? So in order to understand where they're going to go next, you have to understand why they're doing what they're doing. That's why we do these exercises.
Revealed the way in which whiteness was related to property. Alma's narrative was not about mixed race identity, nor was it about ambivalent phenotype. While descent was relevant, it was really the lived experience of racial subordination that bound her to Blackness. Some agency was available to her. Choices denied her brown-skinned family, but it remained a relative privilege within a regime that valorized whiteness. The point was that to her, the choice came at a cost. the cost of complicity, of silence, of denial of the reality of her own life and community to which she was inevitably connected. She had become, as I said, a sentinel at planning sessions of her own destruction. That cost, which became unsustainable for her, was what I tried to name in the piece. It has been interesting, if not puzzling, to see the reading of that narrative as a meditation on liminality, of not belonging, of being not really Black, or between Black and white. Such readings privilege the epistemological question of individual subjectivity, one that has its place, but I was preoccupied with the situatedness, the sedimented and material dimensions of racial subordination to which that subject is tied. And while policing the permissible boundaries of identity has often been a form of oppression, this was not her story, nor my mission. Alma's story was a window into how whiteness was constituted and functioned. Chapter 2, Evolutions, Property and Race. 20 years hence, massive changes at the level of culture, politics, and law and the economy have reshaped the world in unimaginable ways. On the one hand, racial inequality has proven to be quite entrenched, even as domestically and globally, people regarded as non-white increasingly occupy positions of power. Various racial subjects have been called to the scene.
See, one of these things these people have trouble grappling with is what happens when people who are not white skinned get into positions of power or become business owners or become property owners. Now, why is it, do you think, that so an idea I've always had about, okay, socialists, you want equity? I'll give you a form of equity. Why don't we put an entrepreneurship program in every inner city, underserved, oppressed high school that is predominantly serving Black students? Why don't we put an entrepreneurship program in every single one of those high schools, or like even elementary school, middle school in the country, and specifically target underserved, oppressed Black communities by helping their children learn how to build wealth while they're still in school? Why don't we do this? They will never do this. I would actually be completely in favor of this, and I'm not joking. I think as many kids as can learn how to build wealth when they were younger and manage wealth and manage businesses and learn how to grow businesses and learn how the way the world works, I think that would be one of the most uplifting things that could possibly happen for the Black community. Why won't socialists do that? Why would the far left, who champions public school, the far left loves public school, why aren't they in favor of putting entrepreneurship programs into inner city Black schools to teach them how to build and manage wealth? Because it's capitalism. It's capitalism. They don't want Black people starting businesses. Why is it, do you think? Why is it, do you think, that in the summer of 2020 in Minneapolis, they specifically targeted Black owned businesses to burn them down? Why would they do that? Black Lives Matter protest, right? Why would they do that? They did that because they don't want Black people to own their own businesses, because these people do not believe in private property. They don't believe in private entrepreneurship, and they believe that all Black people should inevitably be socialists. At the end of the day, they really do. This is why Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. So there's reasons behind this. When you understand the reasons behind this, you understand why they do what they do.
White, Black, Asian, Latino, biracial, all racial, Calablasian, and otherwise. Nevertheless, I argue that whiteness endures, but has mutated in relationship to evolution in the dominant racial framework and the emergence of post-racialism. Drawing on Sumi Cho's work on this topic, the claim that with respect to racism, it's now mission accomplished, I suggest that post-racialism is a racial ideology that extends the logic of colorblindness and rhetorically moves towards closure while managing new contradictions and conditions. These include various crises, economic and symbolic, regarding race, property, and power. And what happened is part of what I'll try to sketch out here. The 2 points that I want to turn to, there's a lot that's happened with respect to property, but there's 2 points that I want to turn to. One is the assault on the welfare state through the language of property. And second concerns the global crisis of 2008. Both of these are relevant to the contested terrain of post-racialism. So first, the dismantling of the welfare state has been facilitated, I argue, through the rhetoric of property. And I take you back to the 1964 seminal article by Charles Wright called The New Property, which argued that property was so crucial to liberty that even those who depended on government benefits should have certain rights of property in those benefits as a mean of protecting their autonomy. Efforts to translate this insight into due process protections, that is, notice and an opportunity to be heard, for poor people's efforts to secure direct social support, such as welfare or social security benefits, really yielded mixed results. That is, over time, even the modest procedural reforms gradually eroded doctrinally. The new property not only proved insufficient to protect the poor from and the most vulnerable from abuse, the process guarantees were inadequate in the face of a highly organized campaign to liquidate the benefits themselves. In other words, the process protections could really not protect against the other move, which was actually to take the benefits out altogether. Ironically, the concept of the new property was itself appropriated by conservatives to authorize the further assault on the welfare state. By 2000, some conservative scholars contended that Reich's concept of new property did not, quote, include the important property right to manage that property interest, and therefore that the privatization of benefits would actually give individuals greater power vis-a-vis the government.
She's saying that conservatives were arguing to privatize a whole bunch of shit, probably like entitlements and that sort of thing. These people are inherently against privatizing anything. Again, this is code for like this whole thing is called whiteness as property. And she's talking about how she is against the privatization of things like in like the public sphere. Conservatives want to privatize healthcare. They want to privatize schools. They want to privatize this, privatize that. The left is always opposed to that privatization. Why? Because they want everything to be part of the public collective. Does everyone see what I'm talking about? I know that like the Groypers don't necessarily believe in individualism because you guys believe in like theocracy and stuff like that. That's a different argument that we're going to have another day. But what I want you to see is that when we're talking about the left, the spectrum that we're operating on is individualism, which is privatization, versus collectivism, which is public. They want everyone on welfare and well, not only just on welfare. They don't this is not something we're going to get into today, but they don't want people to work beyond a couple hours a week to support the production that the state needs to meet the needs of the state or whatever. So it's not just on welfare. They believe like everyone should have a UBI. Andrew Yang with his UBI bullshit was stupid. That was a dumb idea. I was behind it at the time because I didn't fully understand this. But like, it's not just that they want you on welfare. They want everyone on a UBI. They want universal health care. They even want the community to be providing your food. We watched a presentation for Socialism Saturday. They were talking about rationing food to 2,000 calories a day for the community, for reals.
Thus, for example, by creating, quote, the new property through creating private health insurance accounts, for example, rather than publicly funded health care, the poor would have greater autonomy and control. What's important is that while these proposals were advanced by the right, significant segments of self-identified liberals largely co-signed this view. Major figures in the Democratic Party, Clinton and Gore, for example, the Democratic Leadership Council, supported the investment of Social Security funds in the stock market. Robert Reich, the Treasury Secretary, was cited as supporting school vouchers. Everybody signed on for free trade, bank, and financial market deregulation. And this was all sold as a means of individual empowerment, the new property. It legitimated the dismantling of the social safety net, even as corporate welfare accelerated. Indeed, privatization redistributed the public fisc to the private sector. This shift was related to how capital in its corporate form was increasingly shedding its national identity,
ding, ding, ding.
becoming a faithless and constantly running away person.
There it is.
And simultaneously asserted its rights as a
Why are we talking about capital in a presentation about whiteness if it's all about skin color? Why does capital have anything to do with it if this is just about skin color?
National citizen, white. The implications of this agenda for racial politics and discourse were profound and conflicted. By 1993 and the end of Bush 1.
Yes. Panda Rage, you're starting to get it, bro. They say the words just right to make it sound nice. They wrap the ugly part. That is exactly correct. Now you're starting to see through the language code. It gets worse, Just I need you to sit with it, maybe come back to some future streams, but you're getting what they're doing. They take nuggets of truth or things that sound good and they cover them in mounds of bullshit. And most people can't follow along because they don't know how to speak the language, and so they go like, yeah, that sounds good, yeah, we just want to take care of everyone, we just want everyone to feel good, we want everyone to have everything they need, stuff like that. You're on track, bro. Well done.
And the beginning of Clinton, the distinction between liberal and conservative racial politics in the major parties had decidedly blurred. Clinton's election was the product of a new Democratic consensus that sought to distance itself from a racial justice agenda on the premise that it was politically untenable and ultimately unnecessary. Pursuant to this logic, there was no benign neglect. Instead, there was a direct infliction of racial injury. This includes sentencing enhancements, the Effective Death Penalty Act, immigration enforcement.
But can we acknowledge you guys might not be against like state healthcare and schooling? And again, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that because I want to defund everything. But can we acknowledge that you guys would do something fundamentally different with it than these people would? And therein lies the problem. If we could get to a place where like any sort of like public programs were like ideologically like neutral. I know you guys want theocracy, so you might not agree with this, but I think there's a very big difference between something that is like relatively ideologically neutral if it's going to be funded by taxpayer dollars and what these people would do. That's an argument we're going to have later because like the person who controls the public options, that's actually what we should be concerned about.
And the evisceration of welfare, all in the name of reform. Anemic support for affirmative action came in the form of mend it, don't end it. Any ambiguities, however, about the direction of these trends were settled by the failure to defend Lonnie Guinier's appointment to the Department of Justice in the face of right-wing attacks calling her a quota queen, a label that invoked the racial stereotypes that underwrote the premises of welfare reform to begin with. Simultaneously, however, the party heavily relied upon Blacks as the core Democratic voting bloc. So you have this contradiction of an assault and a constant sort of reliance on Black political power. Deepening wealth inequality and the erosion of the white middle class was a breeding ground for racial resentment and scapegoating, which both parties mined to secure the support of white voters. Racial inequality was reframed as a subset of general income inequality or as the regrettable but inevitable consequence of cultural difference. Colorblindness, a racial framework that has historically been available to both racist and anti-racist projects, was installed. I want to turn now to the economic crisis of 2008, which I've called the threat to white status property. In 2008, the near collapse of the market triggered fears about the implosion of the economy. And here the presumption was that the market was the economy, and the market was infected with toxic assets. But the property was not polluted by aliens or set upon by external forces. This toxicity had been produced by the very institutions that were now fatally infected. The major banks had created assets that had no value, and through the miracle of securitization, the things that had no value were given a price, sold and traded, were posted as collateral and borrowed against, listed on balance sheets and cited as evidence of growth and spread throughout the system. This was all enabled by regulatory collapse, or perhaps more accurately, by the dismantlement of the regulatory system. And we are now told that we were this close to an economic Armageddon. Had a government not intervened and bailed out the banks, the entire system would have collapsed. We would have had massive unemployment and frozen credit. Don't we have that now?
No, you
The
didn't in
solution was to
2014,
authorize a massive
Cheryl.
transfer of public
Bullshit.
assets into private corporations in the name of saving the capitalist system. We could dwell on the irony forever without ever exhausting its depths.
Yo, if he
The
wins,
crony
that's going to be
capitalists who
so
screamed
fucking
about
beautiful.
deficit spending were now demanding billions for bailouts. And this crisis created an imperative to open the spigot at the national treasury. But of course, this wasn't true for everyone because not all crises are created equal. I'm thinking in particular of this one. This huge wealth transfer of property held by the state, or transfer of property held by the state to private hands, was not different in kind, but in scale from earlier moments. In the Wall Street Journal, 3 months after Katrina, neocon idol Milton Friedman salivated, Quote, most New Orleans schools are in ruins, as are the homes of the children who have attended them. The children are now scattered all over the country. This is a tragedy. It is also an opportunity. As Naomi Klein's Disaster Capitalism explained, Friedman was simply applying an economic doctrine that he has developed and argued for years before. Crises allows institutions to achieve under the state of emergency what would otherwise be politically impossible. Thus, as in the wake of...
Oh, did you hear what she just said? Crisis allows institutions to achieve under the state of political emergency what would previously be impossible. Never let a good crisis go to waste, huh, Cheryl? Let's listen to that again.
That he has developed and argued for years before. Crises allows institutions to achieve under the state of emergency what would otherwise be politically impossible. Thus, as in the wake of Katrina, where the model for disaster relief, saving the public, involved privatizing the recovery, the neoliberal consensus is that disaster is another word for opportunity. But
neoliberal. Anytime you hear someone use the term neoliberal, they're a socialist. They are the only group that uses that term. And isn't it funny that she tried to turn this around to say like it's not the left that uses crisis to advance their agenda. It's the right. It's those evil conservatives. They used Hurricane Katrina to privatize things, and privatization is bad. That's literally what she just said. Neoliberal for them is basically anyone to the right of socialist. Well, yeah, I mean new liberal, but like anyone to the right of socialist.
the financial crisis did not look or feel like an opportunity to many. It felt like a crisis. The crisis of confidence also extended to the system itself, producing
You
an
guys
opening
really
for critique of...
like if there's one piece of feedback I hope the Groypers take, and listen, the libertarians make this mistake sometimes too. Come up with new words that socialists aren't using. If you guys come up with your own fucking language, why are you using their language? Come up with your own fucking language. Like use language against them. Adopting their terms is like the easiest way to get their terms entrenched in culture, and remember, they control culture. You don't control culture. Create something new. You said earlier, like, Nick wants to be creative. Nick's this creative genius. I do actually agree with that to a certain extent. I think that Nick is very creative in what he does. And I think his audience is very creative. So come up with new words, bro. Don't use the same words that the far left uses. Would be my recommendation. You guys can do what you want, but I think that would be better.
The particular form of crony capitalism that had been enabled by the dismantling of the already weak regulatory regime. The crisis, however, revealed something more fundamental than regulatory problems. And here I turn to Manfred Max Neff, a renowned Chilean economist and author of the classic Lessons in Barefoot Economics. I really highly commend it to you, who was interviewed about why economists had not foreseen the impending implosion. Max Neff contends that while there has been a massive accumulation of knowledge, there is little or no understanding of the economy, because you can only understand that which you become a part of. Traditional economists are not part of the world, he says, or put another way, they don't see themselves as part of it. They see themselves as separate from it. Because economists do not understand economics to be a subsystem of the broader biosphere, indeed,
you're never going to beat the left. Here's the problem, though. You guys are never going to beat the left at the language game. This is like, okay, so Panda Rage, you remember how we talked about earlier how like the left is not going to play by your rules. The left is going to make their own game with their own rules, and they're going to keep zigzagging all over the fucking place, and they're going to keep changing the rules of the game and force you to play in the game that they set the rules for. When you are using their language, you are not showing their hypocrisy. You're not beating them at their own game. You are quite literally buying into the rules that they are setting for you. And if you buy into the rules that they're setting for you while they're zigzagging all around the playing field and they're changing the rules at any time, because remember, the left is allowed to change the rules. You guys don't. You are playing their game on their home turf. When you're doing that, you're going to lose. What you need to do instead is to invent a completely new game. You guys already know how to do this. You have a whole little groiper culture that has all these groiper things that like normal people don't understand. I get it. You guys already know how to do this. You just need to go one step further and divorce yourself from the idea that you can beat the left at their own game, because you can't. They control way too much. What you need to do is subvert the game that they're playing by creating a new game of your own. Does that make sense?
They think the reverse, that nature is the subsystem of the economy. They accumulate ever increasing quantities of data, but they understand very little. They measure growth and ignore development. Growth is quantitative accumulation. Development is the liberation of creative energy. Growth, classically measured in GDP, the total output of goods and services adjusted for inflation, may reflect increases in the quantity or values of goods and services, but these do not necessarily lead to qualitative improvements in life, the measure of development in things like literacy, life expectancy, environmental quality, and access to healthcare. While growth has been fetishized, it is finite, while development is not. As adults, for example, we may have finished growing, but we have not completed our development. Max Neff also identified a conundrum about growth. Growth brings about improvement in living conditions, but only up to a point. After that, growth produces a decline in the quality of life. This may seem a paradox, but his diagnosis is that this condition, being neither underdeveloped nor developed, but underdeveloping, now describes the United States. That is, growth presents this paradox. The 1% is improving, but everything else is in stagnation or decline. It is now no longer possible to ensure that the next generation will have better living conditions than the current one. This state of being, of underdeveloping, is part of what is at the root of the anxieties, eruptions, and paralysis that we are both embroiled in and witness to. This has implications.
Naruto, bonus points for you for taking an analogy from my book, bro. I do appreciate it. Naruto is saying, would you play a game with the devil? So I have a section in my book where I say, okay, gripers, the devil comes up to earth, because I know you guys believe in hell and you believe in all this stuff. The devil comes up to earth. The devil says, gripers, we're going to play a game. We're going to play on my home field, and I get to set the rules of the game, and I get to change the rules of the game at any time. And if you lose the game, then you're coming to hell with me. If you win the game, you get to go to heaven. Do you agree to play? Do you agree to play by those rules? No, that'd be fucking stupid. You guys aren't fucking stupid. Okay? You guys are smart. You guys are picking up on all this stuff a lot quicker because you're smarter than the average audience, probably because you listen to Nick. And I'm not saying Nick is some great world genius or anything. I don't want to give him too much credit. But like, you guys are picking up on this a lot faster. There is no way in this universe you would agree to those terms, because you're going to lose. Okay? This is why you don't agree to play the game on the left's terms. You have to create your new game, and you have to do it in a way where you're drawing the left into it and forcing them to play by your rules. That includes creating new language, creating new culture, creating new things that are going to appeal to people on that deeply entertaining level. Does that make sense? Aha! I'm actually starting to grasp why we're always behind. That's right, because you're always playing the left's game. The minute that you stop playing the left's game is the minute that you start to because every time you don't agree to the fucking rules that the left gives you, that's a chance to subvert the game that they're playing. Well done.
For the racial order and underwrites racial panics. Underdeveloped, of course, signifies the third world, the colored, some place that is economically backward, a place where it's best to be from rather than to just be. And as the United States is becoming less and less white, the specter of becoming that underdeveloped colored place looms. The U.S. is in danger of maintaining its status as a white nation and of its
But the left won't play without cheating. Stop worrying about what the left does. Stop worrying about it. Right now, you should not be worrying about what the left does right now. Right now, what you should be worried on is how do we subvert what they're doing. They're going to respond They're going to do, and that's something that can be talked about later. They're not going to like that you guys are trying to make them play by your rules. They're really going to be pissed off. But like when they get pissed off, they make mistakes. And then when they make mistakes, that's a time for you to get an advantage. Everyone needs to start playing chess. Like if you don't play chess already, start playing fucking chess, guys. Honestly, just download a free game on your phone, start learning the rules of chess, because if you start playing chess, you're going to see how you outmaneuver your opponents.
Property interest in whiteness. So what has happened to race? So partly here, I talk about how colorblindness itself has been confronted with certain contradictions and pressures. One of them relates to the idea that discrimination only occurs at the moment of conscious choice. And this turns out to be completely false, and the social psychologists and cognitive psych people have invited us to put on the 3D glasses so that we can see the other dimension beyond intent. Color blindness, as it turns out, is not cognitively possible. Babies under the age of 1 are able to make racial.
I kind of like that we're having a completely different conversation in the chat than what Cheryl Harris is doing. I just confused her with Kimberly Crenshaw. We have to cheat. You have to break principle. You can't win against a team that's already cheating if you don't break the rules too. I'm not opposed to fucking cheating, bro. I'm not opposed to cheating. But like, you can't cheat if you're not making your own rules, and you're not like the goal. If you're going to cheat, fine. I'm not going to make a judgment about that. But the goal ultimately should be to create a separate game that you're drawing the left into, like you're creating a trap. You need to set a fucking trap. You need to set a trap to get them to react to you instead of you reacting to them. If that involves cheating, fucking fine. I don't care. Like, if we make up our own rules, the left is going to consider that cheating either way. Like, when you make up your own rules and you play your own game, are you ever really cheating? No, because you control the game. You're making up the rules. And this is why this doesn't happen on the right. The right likes law and order. We have to create new laws and place people in places to enforce that. I'm not so much around the enforcement thing, but like, I mean, you're getting on the right track. Just think of it as a game. Are you going to play chess or are you going to play checkers? You know? Are you going to create a completely new board game? Or a real life game? Whatever it is.
Racial distinctions and to make associations based on them. Obasogi has shown that even people who are blind since birth perceive race. An implicit bias, how we unconsciously react differently to different races in different contexts, is endemic. While critics challenge these findings as non-scientific, they cannot stop the growing consensus that maybe we cannot disappear race by simply covering our eyes. The disjuncture between the science and the doctrine that Kang and others have documented creates a compelling argument for doctrinal reform that colorblindness is ill-equipped to answer. Theoretically, colorblindness has also had its discontents. As it turns out, it's impossible to implement or operationalize. Neil taught us that long ago. You cannot ignore that which you've already seen. In fact, colorblindness turns out to be like the instruction to the jury to disregard that last remark. Don't think about the temperature outside. What are you thinking about? Okay. So legislating colorblindness actually intensifies the salience of race. Colorblindness per se also may have decreasing utility in protecting.
So I just want to point something out. We talked about how the left is not actually like, so the left thinks that colorblindness is bad. Colorblindness in the way that they're defining it is like you don't see skin color. You don't judge people by the color of their skin. The left is racist as fuck. This is why the left wants affirmative action. They want people to be judged by the color of their skin. Okay? So the left is not opposed to racism. They're not opposed to judging people based on their identity. They love it. They do it all the time. She's literally asking for it right now. What they do want is to eliminate the basis of inequity, which is not actually like race. They believe it's capitalism. Yes. This is correct, Panda Rage. Maybe instead of enforcing rules, we just switch up the old games to the new games, the games you created. Bravo, bro. I really mean that. That's really good. Go teach your friends this. This is what you need to do.
White dominance under conditions of changing demography. Where white status has been a function of power and demography, the shift to a numerical minority triggers particular anxieties, and it threatens whiteness as property. Protecting it may then call for some different or at least updated logics. And here's where I turn to some of Sumi's work and try to think through some of the implications for post-racialism. Mindful of Kim's point, though, that with Ferguson, we may have exhausted the utility of post-racialism. What I want to say is, though, is that the perceived...
Hang on, I got a super chat coming in from Tayton. Panda, we have to play the game of every action is your target's reaction. Well, this is the other thing, too. The reactionary right does themselves a disservice by calling themselves the reactionary right. The right has got to stop reacting to every single thing the left does. Like the left baits the right all the time. The left baited the right with COVID. The left baited the right with the riots of 2020. The left baited the right into January 6th. The left baits the right all the fucking time. The left baited the right into overturning Roe v. Wade because they knew it would win them an election and have record fundraising hauls. Like the left wants your reaction. And calling yourselves the reactionary right only elicits exactly what the left wants. And again, this goes back to this idea of like, you can't play their game because they set the rules of their game and they can change the rules at any time because they got themselves into institutional power to be able to change the rules at any time. You need to create new games and draw them into it. I was there on January 6th. I thought there was a lot that was pretty great about it. I did. It's true. But it ended up being used against us. I got fucking audited because of that. It ended up being used against us, is the point. It's not that there weren't positive aspects. I mean, I think like anytime you got like some sort of thing like that, I think that's actually a positive thing. It disrupts things, if nothing else. But every single, like, that was used against every single person ad nauseum forever.
Lack of a viable alternative, we may be at a state where we have a necessary but insufficient condition for a radical break with that framework. So I still think it's important to look at it and to be grateful for those contradictions. So under anti-discrimination law, under post-racialism, whites are not simply included as a potential victim. That is, it's like whites, blacks, everybody can be discriminated against on the basis of race. Whites are now the paradigm victim. Secondly, strict scrutiny has effectively extended not only to anti-discrimination remedies like affirmative action.
Well, Nick was more involved than I was. I purposely stayed out of all that Stop the Steal bullshit. And don't think that Brandon Strock didn't try to drag me into it, because he did. I purposely stayed out of the Stop the Steal bullshit for like, because I was specifically, first of all, I didn't like that Nick was involved at the time because I didn't like Nick at the time. I'm not saying I like him now or anything. Okay, don't get it twisted. But like I purposefully stayed as far away from that Stop the Steal stuff as I possibly could, because I knew that was going to go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. But I was still there on January 6th. I just didn't actually do anything.
Which are now claimed to be a source of injury to whites, but to the entire corpus of anti-discrimination law. And what I mean by that is that voting rights law, school desegregation law, disparate impact law, these are all being subjected to a form of kind of strict scrutiny review. I guess I would say ideologically, post-racialism privileges self-designation. You are what you say you are. And post-racialism conceptualizes racial identity as private property on which the state cannot infringe.
Oh!
We talked a little bit earlier about
Let's listen again.
Designation. You are what you say you are. And post-racialism conceptualizes racial identity as private property
Ding!
on which the state cannot infringe.
Post-racialism conceptualizes race as private property, mother effers. Told ya. Let's listen again.
Racialism conceptualizes.
Hang on, we'll go back a little farther. Listen.
I guess I would say ideologically, post-racialism privileges self-designation. You are what you say you are. And post-racialism conceptualizes racial identity as private property on which the state cannot infringe.
Post-racialism conceptualizes racism as private property. Did you guys hear that? Gripers, I want you to admit it. You just heard it. Private property means capitalism. There's nothing that socialists want to do more than get rid of all private property, because getting rid of private property gets rid of capitalism, and that's how they usher in their Marxist utopia. We got our golden nugget, guys. Let me just clip that shit real quick.
Post-racialism privileges self-designation. You are what you say you are. And post-racialism conceptualizes racial identity as private property on which the state cannot infringe.
Bing. Thank you. Everyone owes me $2. That's the rules. If I'm right and you're wrong, you owe me $2. I'll take those super chats, gropers.
We talked a little bit earlier about Prop 54 in the prior panel, the Racial Privacy Act, another gift from Ward Connerly, which barred the state from keeping information about a person's race. It failed as an initiative in California, but the idea has really taken hold in terms of public opinion. At the same time, this notion that, you know, your sort of racial identity is your business, is private, you have this kind of racial subjectivity continually being shaped by state power. So Blackness is being produced by incarceration and criminalization. The social welfare system is the means through which Black and brown women are produced as dysfunctional and deviant subjects. Latino identity is produced by the criminalization of immigration and the construction of the illegal. Muslims as a racialized category are produced by the operation of the national security state. So post-racialism valorizes personal choice, honors agency.
Did you hear that? They just said that Muslims were created as a racial category by like whatever the state.
Illegal. Muslims as a racialized category are produced by the operation of the national security state.
Muslims as a racialized category are produced by the operation of a national security state. Huh. All right. Thank you for following the rules. I agree, but you deserved it regardless. Thank you for following the honor system. Appreciate it.
So post-racialism valorizes personal choice, honors agency, be all you can be. However, simultaneously, it reproduces racial logics that support subordination. Secondly, post-racialism's commitment to protect some value in whiteness, however relative, what Derek Bell called the promise not to be the face at the bottom of the well.
Are they saying racial categories exist based on different vectors of oppression? Well, yes, I think they actually, she is kind of saying that, like, so it's definitely directly related to private property, but she's I guess saying different types of oppression form different racial categories, which is not actually something I've heard before, because I've only heard them talking. This is the first time I've ever heard them reference like Muslims. So I guess kind of like that is, and that aligns with intersectionality too, doesn't it? Where like different types of oppression lead to different like outcomes, and like multiple forms of oppression lead to like different things. Like if you have more oppression points, you have different outcomes and less oppression points. But that's a really good observation, VIP Tundra. Well done. I wouldn't have come up with that.
It coexists with expanding whiteness to encompass non-whites. And I think Chuck was alluding to this a little bit yesterday.
It coexists to expand whiteness to accommodate non-whites. Hello. Renan, here's see, Grapers, like you have people honoring your $2 super chats. I know you guys aren't aware of the rules. The rules on my channel are when I'm right about something and you're wrong and you argue with me about it and I'm eventually proven right, you owe me $2. Now other people are honoring your super chats, but don't say we didn't tell you, okay? Now you know for next time. If you argue with me, there are consequences for losing. Anyway, let's listen.
Racialism's commitment to protect some value in whiteness, however relative, what Derek Bell called the promise not to be the face at the bottom of the well. It coexists with expanding whiteness to encompass non-whites. And I think
whiteness is expanded to encompass non-whites. How is that possible if whiteness is just about skin color? I just want to go back and listen to that one more time. I want to go back a little bit further because I'm just going to clip this at the same time. I just want to listen to like the lead up to that because I was too busy chatting with the chat. But I'll clip it at the same time so we can save some time.
B. However, simultaneously, it reproduces racial logics that support subordination. Secondly, post-racialism's commitment to protect some value in whiteness, however relative, what Derek Bell called the promise not to be the face at the bottom of the well, it coexists with expanding whiteness to encompass non-whites. And I think Chuck was alluding to this a little bit yesterday. Post-racial whiteness is conditionally available to persons of any racial group, even some blacks.
Holy shit. Post-racial whiteness, which remember she said earlier that post-racial whiteness was a function of private property. We clipped that earlier. Post-racial whiteness is available to everyone, including blacks. You guys get it now? This is why we have to listen to this shit.
Obama's election is really the prize currency in this symbolic racial economy. This is not to say that Obama either sought to be or sees himself as an honorary white person. Certainly the vitriolic racist attacks on his decisions, his competency, his family, his citizenship, all reflect how highly contested his status is. No other president has faced this kind of assault. Rather, my point is that his presidency has been ideologically positioned to liquidate claims of racial subordination and to demonstrate that whiteness is a democratically available social good. Blackness under this regime is fetishized as a symbol of the declining significance of race. However, at the same time, it also embodies threat, anger, danger that can be shot on sight.
This is where they're basically shitting on the idea that, like, we have a black president. So when they say post-racialist, when Cheryl Harris says post-racial, what does she mean? Any guesses in the chat? When Cheryl Harris says post-racial, what does she mean? I'm just checking it over on Rumble too. Rumble, I'm paying attention to you. We're not getting a lot of interaction over there today, but I am paying attention to you. When she says post-racial, what does she mean? Last chance for guesses. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think, I'm not like 100% sure of this, but you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think that she means post-racial means after the election of Barack Obama as president. Because what she's saying is, like, she's basically shitting on this idea of, like, we elected a black president, now we don't have racism anymore. So post-racial is after the first black president, because it was that time where like we were supposed to have conquered racism because we had the first black president. That's my guess. Let me know if you think I'm wrong.
To preserve the national security. What can brown or black do for you? Post-racialism constructs a narrative of inclusion, even as actual practices constitute conditions that could provide the bill of particulars on a charge.
See how she's like doing the whole post-racialism section of her speech surrounding, like, Barack Obama was elected president. We were supposed to, like, Obama. Exactly. Obama was the changing point between racial and post-racial.
Of genocide, as did the Civil Rights Congress in 1951. Thirdly, as a racial corollary, post-racial whiteness harnesses the increased incidence of interracial, intimate, and family relations among whites and non-whites as evidence of the erosion of racial categories and hence of racism. The disappearance of the old categories is accompanied by the appearance of a new one, what Wisteria calls the new race, that is appropriated into the narrative of post-racial transcendence. Fourthly, relatedly, post-racial whiteness reproduces and updates the racial rules. Well, what are the racial rules? Well, Lewis Gordon had describes them as follows. Rule 1, be white.
That means private property ownership.
Rule 2, if you can't be white, don't be black. So given the shifting demographics, one might ask whether this racial logic has fundamentally changed in the post-racial era. Historically, the law rigorously policed the boundaries of whiteness, but courts also expanded whiteness to include groups and persons based on their assimilative traits or performance and in consideration of other social interests.
Assimilative traits means they weren't white, but they ascended to whiteness. So, like Robin DiAngelo literally writes about this in White Fragility, where she says that Italians are white because they've ascended to whiteness. Irish are white because they've ascended to whiteness. That's what she means. Like, they're not technically what we would traditionally consider to be white, because there were times in this country when Italian and Irish were very oppressed, to be honest. But they've ascended to whiteness, and so they're now considered white instead of a different racial category.
With respect to the latter, for example, Mexican Americans, as Laura has taught us, were formerly categorized as whites as part of a project of conquest and empire. I mean, whiteness wasn't extended to Mexican Americans to actually make it better, right? Now, the formal legal adjudication of individual racial identity, that is determining who belongs in what category, is viewed now as a fool's errand. However, racial identity continues to be asserted, ascribed, called for, called upon through a host of legal rules and policies. And underneath this claim of fluidity and infinite gradations and hybridity, whiteness persists. It expands to absorb those who can conform, and importantly, the measure of that conformity often remains the distance from Blackness. Perhaps the rule is be white-ish, but still, if you can't, don't be Black. Or maybe the rule is be white, but if you can't be white, don't be Black, be Black-ish. I'm not sure, but
See, these are the type of things that really confuse people, because now she kind of is talking about skin color, but again, you have to like read between the lines to know that socialists are very deeply confused about why there are black people in the world who are not socialists. I cannot emphasize, it's like a weird undertone they have to anything. I picked up on there was a lot of this at the socialism conference, where they truly and sincerely believe that all black people should be socialist. And so that's kind of like what she's saying when it comes to this. So again, like, it's not that blackness necessarily means socialism in the way that whiteness means capitalism. It's just kind of like this underlying tension where they really do. This is why they're so pissed off at people like Clarence Thomas or Jay-Z or Kanye West or all of these like really Larry Elder, like really successful black men who don't buy into this bullshit. Those people piss them off more than anyone else in the world.
you get the idea. Okay. Chapter 3. The world is dialectical. That's from my friend and poet.
Dialectic
Sterling
means
Plumb.
language. That's when you know they're fucking around
Under
with language.
post-racialism, the erasure of race and the suppression of race-sensitive remediation has become identified as a liberal project. Many self-declared liberals and progressives have abandoned a race and class analysis for a class, not race analysis, declaring a consensus that race-conscious policy interventions are politically unpopular and practically ineffective and normatively problematic on top of that. Most prominent among affirmative action's alleged deficiencies is that it undermines efforts to address class or quote unquote real inequality. According to a number of self-identified liberals and even progressives, in failing to deliver for the truly disadvantaged, affirmative action purportedly provides assistance to those who need it least. There are many iterations of this, but Walter Ben Michaels, for example, charges that race-conscious affirmative action simply reproduces elites doing little more than offering a rainbow version of class inequality. Richard Sander has defended his claim that race-conscious affirmative action policies produce academic mismatch, that is, producing unqualified Black students in academic environments where they are more likely to fail. He has defended it against charges that it is empirically unsound, and it is indeed tragically so, and that it trades on tropes of Black intellectual inferiority by contending that defenders of race-conscious affirmative action are ignoring class hierarchy in higher education. In Place Not Race, Georgetown law professor Cheryl Cashin has explicitly claimed that her arguments against race-conscious affirmative action and for place ought not to be confused with class-based alternatives, but in many respects, her arguments are expressed in a similar against race register. Quote, she says, the civil rights community expends energy on a policy that primarily benefits the most advantaged children of color while contributing to a divisive politics that makes it difficult to create quality K-12 education for all children. And again, the mantra of diversity might be applied to a school that admits African elites or their American cousins like Sasha or Malia or Blue Ivy or my kids, but diversity by phenotype puts no pressure on institutions to dismantle underlying systems of exclusion that propagate inequality.
She meant
Sasha and
inequity.
Malia, by the way, have their father to thank for making.
If this presentation had been done now instead of in 2014, she would not have said inequality, she would have said equity. Because equity wasn't a word that had popular adoption when this presentation was done. So even since this, the language has changed dramatically.
Them the poster children for Blacks who do not deserve but who are most likely to benefit from race-conscious affirmative action. In an off-cited interview, he said he didn't think they should benefit from affirmative action given their advantages. I think, however, this is just a parenthetical, what would be more instructive to the debate would be to focus not on the children, but on their parents' trajectory, or more specifically, at least Michelle's, as her history is more representative of the often fragile position of the Black working class. Given that the early demands for race-conscious affirmative action were structured around race and class, how did things move to class, not race? Even if prior campaigns failed to implement a true class and race agenda, why is the cure for that failure to jettison race? Rather than mobilizing a sense of linked fate, that dismantling racial hierarchy is joined with addressing the problem of capitalism, these projects are placed in opposition, and the challenge to white entitlement or white privilege.
Wait. Did you guys just hear that? I almost fucking missed it. Hang on. Listening again.
Why is the cure for that failure to jettison race? Rather than mobilizing a sense of linked fate, that dismantling racial hierarchy is joined with addressing the problem of capitalism.
Oh! Dismantling the racial hierarchy is enjoined with dismantling capitalism. I hate to say I told you so, Grapers. I really do. I just knew it. I fucking knew it. Hang on. Clipping time. Everyone owes me $2. Yep, she said it out loud, Tyrone. Yes, she did. They always do eventually.
Why is the cure for that failure to jettison race? Rather than mobilizing a sense of linked fate, that dismantling racial hierarchy is joined with addressing the problem of capitalism, these projects are placed in opposition, and the challenge to white entitlement or white privilege is then recast as an elitist, anti-populist project.
Hang on, just let me get my clip. This is why racism and capitalism mean the same thing, because they always talk about them in the same context. They cannot dismantle. These people do not believe that they can dismantle what they consider to be racism, which is systemic racism, without also simultaneously dismantling capitalism, because dismantling capitalism is the only way they get to equity. Does everyone understand? Let me know if you don't understand. I mean, I have to say, like, if they're still here, they're taking it well. I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due.
The class not race argument ignores the accumulation of advantage and disadvantage that is embodied in the materiality of race. Whiteness is not a skin color or even a racial type. It is a social relation.
Whiteness is not a skin color, motherfuckers. I'm making a whole fucking thread of these clips later. I'll be like, Grapers, here you go. All right. One more time, Cheryl. Say the quiet part out loud, Cheryl.
As an elitist, anti-populist project. The class not race argument ignores the accumulation of advantage and disadvantage that is embodied in the materiality of race. Whiteness is not a skin color or even a racial type. It is a social relation constructed on exclusion, structural privilege, and its valorization. When critics of race-conscious remediation adopt the framework of class not race, they are in danger of conceptualizing race as something outside of the social, political, and ideological domain. Joel Olson's The Abolition of White Democracy makes a similar critique of political theory. While most
all right, that's a good enough clip for right now. Whiteness is not a skin type. God, every conservative on the fucking internet needs to hear this. And again, guys, this presentation that we're watching right now is 9 years old. 9. 9 fucking years old. We've known this for a long ass time. This is what pisses me off so much about conservatives is like, I found this on YouTube today. This has been on YouTube since 2014. What if some conservative influencer somewhere had just sat down and watched the fucking presentation literally labeled whiteness means or whiteness as property? Because they say the quiet part out loud every single time. This is why I knew what she was going to say. I didn't even have to watch it to know what she was going to say because they say the quiet part out loud all the fucking time. All you need to do is listen.
The tension between democratic egalitarian ideals and racism, Olson argues that race is not created, quote, prior to or outside the political realm. Rather, it is produced within it and is therefore a product of democracy rather than its antithesis. Thus, the restriction of citizenship, this is an example he uses, to white free persons was not only that white persons could become citizens, it is that becoming a citizen effectively made one white. Class, not race adherents labor under similar misconceptions in arguing that a precondition of addressing class inequality is erasing race. This conceives of race as an ascriptive characteristic, almost a free-floating signifier, and ignores the ways in which race has produced class. The infamous notorious idea.
Why would I want to torture myself? Because this is the only way that you're actually going to get accurate information about what's going on. And sadly, I'm the only fucking person on the internet doing this. I would love it if more people would do this and spread the wealth so that I don't have to drive myself fucking insane by watching all of this. But since no one else is going to do it, I guess we will.
Idea of things being mutually constitutive. To talk about class is to invoke a category that is always already racially marked. If somebody describes a neighborhood bar as working class, what would be your guess as to its racial demographic?
White.
What if I described it as upper class?
White.
Now, true, we're all sophisticated enough to know that these phrases do not necessarily mark the bar or the neighborhood as white, but a common inference would be that it is. And it's David Roediger's The Wages of Whiteness, which is...
Listen, she kind of just said like earlier, like, so she just kind of said like what I said earlier when I said that these people are really confused why all black people are not socialists. She just said, what would you assume a working class bar would be? Meaning that she would consider that to be black. I wouldn't consider that to be black. I've been to many working class bars that are almost entirely white, but she considers the working class to be black and the upper class to be white. Did everyone catch that? I know we're going long today, guys, but there's a lot of really good stuff in this. Beth, thank you for the super sticker. I do appreciate it.
It's a brilliant riff on Du Bois, explains why working class is a racially coded social category.
See, they think all working class people are black.
Laboring class was crafted by differentiating it from slavery. Centuries later, whiteness confers relative advantage across the board, for whites at every income level have significantly more wealth than blacks at comparable levels. Ditto for Latinos. Whites also have better health outcomes, live in better neighborhoods, even if they are poor. The poor whites do not attend segregated high poverty schools. Most importantly, whites are ensured that their political interests are never at the margins of the political discourse, even if the system fails to deliver on its promises. And this is how whiteness comes to function as a cross-class coalition. This is not to suggest that this is always a peaceful relationship. At one level, the current crisis has tested that arrangement. Anxiety over the future of whiteness because of shifting demographic patterns and the deeply destabilizing character of the 2008 crisis has given birth to two oppositional movements, one explicitly reactionary and color conscious, the Tea Party, and the other explicitly progressive and largely colorblind, Occupy. There are several implications that flow from this in terms of
Hang on. VIP, do you think laymen actually understand this? Why does affirmative action and economic relief prioritize non-whites? Why is there a concerted effort to play white? So first of all, there's not actually a concerted effort to replace whites with immigrants. What you're seeing is reflective of their they don't believe borders should exist. So it's not like, so saying, and I understand why you're interpreting it this way, but saying that there's like a concerted effort to replace whites with immigrants, that's not technically true. They don't plot of like we are going to like overthrow the white people. They really don't. What it is they don't believe borders should exist because they don't believe private property should exist, and the migration of immigrants as a result of that is simply a reflection of the fact that they don't believe that borders should exist in the first place. But it's not like a proactive, targeted thing for socialists. So what I would say, do laymen actually understand this? Yes and no. So you got to understand there we're about like there's about to be like you're in college, right? You said you were in college and you're a poor college kid and that's why you can't follow the $2 super chat rule. I get it, bro. It's fine. But like in colleges right now, like the colleges have been captured like ubiquitously for a really long time, but really the long march through the institutions like was like culminated about 10-15 years ago. And so we're starting to see the first generations graduate from completely captured systems. They understand this. I guarantee you. Like, are you like can if you feel comfortable, you don't have to do this, but like are you at like a state school or are you at let me ask this a different way. Are you at an explicitly conservative college? Because if you are not at an explicitly conservative college, then chances are you have this shit built into your coursework. Or like a trade school. If you're at a trade school, you probably don't have this yet, but most college students right now will get this explicitly built into their coursework. That's not to say everyone will pick up on it, but the vast majority of them will start to have some understanding of this. This is why you're seeing these pro-Hamas protests on college campuses, because it's explicitly built into the education system now. So do all of them understand it in the way that I'm explaining it? Probably not, because I've drilled this down into like the most easy possible to understand thing, but they do understand different conceptions of this, and that's why like if someone goes through college, they are almost entirely going to come out on the left. Like destroying higher education should be something we should all be able to get behind. Panda Rage. So let me make sure I have this straight. White equals high class, everyone else equals low class. So that when right means actual. So what I want you to think about is bourgeois versus proletariat. The bourgeois are the private property owners, the business owners, the elites. Anyone of any skin color can be bourgeois. That's our code for like bourgeois equals capitalism. Whiteness equals capitalism. Low class, proletariats, workers, the people who are exploited to create profit for the bourgeois. And again, anyone of any skin color can be a proletariat, right? It's not about skin color necessarily. It only seems like it is because they use whiteness as code for capitalism, which she just said a little bit earlier. So instead of thinking like high class, low class, think about bourgeois versus proletariat, whiteness versus oppressed versus worker, oppressor versus oppressed. Does that make sense? What they're trying to do is talk about race in a way that reflects class consciousness, which is what Marx is primarily focused on. Yup. See, you've seen this. I go to a state school. Yes, we're required to take sociology, which is completely captured. A lot of the messaging has implicit messaging. But exactly. See, you've seen this, bro. You know where this is coming from.
Deconstructing the class, not race analysis. While the great bugbear of social science research, the thing you're never supposed to do, is to conflate correlations with causation, something that is replete in Rick Sanders' work, for example. The problem with the class, not race arguments, particularly its liberal and progressive versions, is to treat the relationship between class and race, specifically between whiteness and relative advantage and blackness and relative disadvantage, as correlational when in fact it is
whiteness and relative advantage, bourgeois, blackness and relative disadvantage, proletariat.
causal.
Oh,
The fact that blacks are clustered at the lower end of the distribution of wealth and income is not coincidental. It reflects the continuation into the present of a set of practices and social relations that secured for whiteness relative.
How much longer do we have of this? I need to get dinner. Oh my God, we still 16 minutes. Okay, 16 minutes isn't all that bad. Rottweiler says, I hope this helps people struggling with this. This is just like Mao's class struggle with red proletariat and black bourgeois identities. Thanks for the super chat, Rottweiler. I think that's a great correlation to make. All right, guys, 16 minutes left. We're going to make it. Hopefully they do some sort of Q&A. But I do want to thank everyone who came out to the presentation today to watch it. I know this has been an extra long one because there was a little bit more preamble, a little bit more chatting. I've really tried hard to answer everyone's questions and to make sure I'm on top of things. If people still have remaining questions, now is the best time to ask. But remember, I do these streams like this all the time. And so if you ever want other examples, definitely come back to Socialism Saturday on Saturdays at 6 p.m. This is a staple of that. During the week, we do different kinds of things. Sometimes we do streams like this. Sometimes we do other things. But please always come back, ask questions. I will show you millions of examples that illustrate the same thing. Also, you can hear about them out of the horse's mouth. Am I going to be on Cozy? I mean, maybe. It really depends on when he goes live. Like, I have other things I need to do tonight. I do want to hear his analysis of like what happened today with the hospital. So probably, but like I can I just say, I fucking can't stand that he can't show up like when he says he's going to show up. It drives me goddamn crazy. He's like, I understand this is like a young guy thing. He's streaming in the middle of the night, like whatever. And I usually work until 2 or 3 in the morning, so it's fine. But it's really fucking annoying that he can't start on like a normal time, okay? So it depends. It depends on when he actually gets his ass streaming, whether I'm going to be there or not. Cozy is Nick.
Relative value and class privilege. Class in this country has meaning beyond income or wealth. It is actually a material expression of racial hierarchy. Whiteness confers relative benefits on all whites, even those burdened by class oppression. Class, not race, denies this fundamental fact, and in doing so, functions as a discursive strategy under which whiteness is protected.
Hang on. Naruto says, breaking Shulamon just tweeted that the director of hospital confirmed the IOF warned them. Listen, man, I think Israel bombed that fucking hospital. And that is... Israel's trying to say that Hamas accidentally bombed their own hospital. And they're posting these bullshit videos from like several years ago to prove that Hamas bombed their own hospital. Israel fucking bombed that hospital. I called it on Twitter earlier, and now there's like more and more evidence coming out that I was right. That those like God fucking this is what's making me on Nick's team right here. This bullshit. They're gonna bomb they warned that hospital, so they bombed a fucking hospital with hundreds of people in it. How more ridiculous can you get? Don't tell me this isn't a fucking genocide. Please.
Now to the coda on resilience. Get up off the pavement. Brush the dirt up off my psyche. That's Earl. Recently, the news reported that a white lesbian couple has sued the sperm bank that provided them the sperm used to conceive their baby because the company mistakenly sent the sperm from a black donor. They are suing for wrongful birth and breach of warranty, citing the damages arising from the difficulty of trying to raise their now 2-year-old blackish, mixed race daughter in an all-white community. Their sexuality has made it difficult to gain acceptance from their family and the small town in Ohio where they live.
Oh, bullshit.
The addition of a black child has made it even worse.
Shit.
They also don't know what to do with her hair. I'm not lying. That's in the lawsuit. They have to take her to a black neighborhood to deal with it. This is hard. This is hard, people. Maybe the case won't survive. Maybe it'll get tossed, but I just want to ask, what kind of world is this? Where the birth of a colored child is grounds for a claim for money damages. 50 years ago in Doe versus Louisiana, a Black mixed-race child born to a white mother was at the center of a dispute over her racial classification and adoption. And I want to thank my student. I don't know if Shai is here. Sharissa here? Okay. For helping me connect this. This is what I mean when I say we learn from our students.
That's powerful, Gary.
She was born to a white mother, and the mother died, and the child who was classified as white on her birth certificate was given to her aunt, her mother's sister. But because the child looked Black, this arrangement was increasingly untenable. A Black man who had been involved with the mother sought to adopt the child, but the court refused to reclassify her as Black, leaving her in the hands of her wary and weary white aunt. There are surely profound differences between then and now, but the echoes of that case, the persistence of notions of whiteness as property are with us in the here and now. And we are called upon then to remain attentive, connected, committed, and resilient, because there are many, many children that need us to be so. Thank you.
Okay, they've got about, again, 15 minutes of this left. I'm kind of hoping they do a little Q&A, because the Q&A is always the best part. We always get the best stuff from the Q&A. So I'm hoping they do a little bit of that. Let's see. First, they had to kiss Cheryl Harris's ass by giving her a state. Look at all the people. Look at all the people in this room, guys. These are all professors and students. These are all people who are going to teach other people in colleges.
Okay, so Cheryl is happy to entertain any and all questions.
Oh,
so
good.
Please
A
feel
Q&A.
free, to
Cheryl,
raise
you are
them.
so great, and you are
The
so
mics
beautiful,
are
and you are
there,
so brave,
queue up
Cheryl.
so
Why
that,
are you so great,
people in
Cheryl?
the
You're just
overflow
amazing,
room
Cheryl.
will be able to hear.
There's an overflow
So
room.
any questions?
Holy shit.
Comments?
There's an overflow room with more people watching this. Look at them run
Okay, I
up.
have two.
Holy
The
shit.
first one is, so where will this be published? Okay.
See, I told you,
It's
you
very,
are so
very
amazing,
important. This
Cheryl.
has
You are
to
so
be
brave and
published. In fact,
beautiful.
you should just
Why
do
are
a
you
book
so amazing,
with the
Cheryl?
reproduction of the original and this. I'm telling you.
Thank
I
you.
The
can't wait
second
to give you
question
my
has to
money,
do with
Cheryl.
in part 2 of your talk, is something you know, and I want you to elaborate on, is that part of the blame of the economic crisis of 2008, of course, fell on Black and brown
Right.
mortgage owners,
Right.
which really makes the connection between property and what happens when Black and brown people get property in terms of real estate, and that being the source of the
cause.
collapse.
Right.
So I just want you to sort of riff on that a little bit.
It's a really brilliant point, and I've thought a lot about how this crisis around creating this fictive property, this toxic property, rested upon the exploitation of Black and brown people and their relationship to property. So there really is a deep relationship, Robin, and I really want to explore it. I think there's already been some people that have been doing some work. I saw a piece in the New York Times some time ago about the securitization and trying to actually trace the path. There are actually neighborhoods that you can go to and find out. I mean, it takes like a detective work because it's so layered, but there are neighborhoods that you can actually identify that were targeted for these kinds of toxic loans, that people knew that they were exploiting these homeowners. And the thing about it is, of course, this is not the first time. This is the second or third cycle of this, right? And one of the questions I think that we have to sort of ask is, how.
Well, okay, so Panda Rage, let me ask you a question based on what you've already heard here today. Do you believe that if they want to build a society based on equity, if equity where everyone is the same is the goal, do they believe that it's a problem that there will be only one race eventually? Do they view that as a bad thing? If sameness is the goal, equity equals sameness. So probably not, right? Exactly. They don't think it's going to be a problem. It's what they want.
what are the changing relationships of capital to both the intangible and tangible property, and what are their implications for the racial politics on the ground? And that's what I think, but thank you for that. That's a very helpful question. We can also just go.
What I've learned over the past 2 days is that sometimes it takes a while for people to warm up. So I just want to make sure that,
Okay.
There's no one there with a desire to ask a question.
Okay.
I'll swallow my cookie first. I was wondering if you could, just from your perspective, sort of give an overview of the last 20 years of the kind of criticism.
Already an overview.
Yeah. The critique, the negative response. I mean, we've been celebrating your work for the last few days, and, and how that has evolved over the decades.
And what are some of the critiques?
And yeah, and from your perspective, because that will help.
So I just want to emphasize this. I know I just keep talking and that makes the presentation run longer, but like, this is why the left wins. This woman wrote a paper in Harvard Law Review 20 years later. After that paper had been taught all over the country, they are holding a 3-day effing symposium about that paper. The reason the left wins is they are constantly publishing. They are constantly teaching. They are constantly holding conferences. They are constantly articulating their ideas. They are constantly pushing this content out there. The right doesn't do this. Okay? Not in the way the left does it. They keep perpetuating it over and over and over. And they're not winning because their ideas are great. They're winning because they do the work and they show up when the right doesn't. A 3-day fucking conference 20 years after a paper is published. That's insane.
Form how the piece will, we can make it work continually in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the critiques is it's theory. What's it got to do with anything? How do you use it in a lawsuit? Right. One of the other critiques is, I think I was alluding to it a bit, and I'm not sure if this is a critique. Maybe I'll just say that it's a deployment of the work that I want to say this, one of the things is that this has been such a tremendous gift because I get to see what comes back, and what comes back is so rich. And so I don't want to sound as though I'm picking, but I guess I would say that there's been a particular strand of reaction to the work, which is centered on questions of whether or not my grandmother was really Black. Whether or not it really is useful to sort of think about it in this way, because there's a kind of core claiming of identity in the piece that's kind of old school, I guess, or something. And I think that it's entirely legitimate for people to pursue their own intellectual projects about subjectivity and racial identity and all the rest of that's totally fine. It's just that what I was trying to say is that was not what Alma was telling me. And I was trying to tell what Alma was telling me. So different people can experience it in different ways, but that would be, I guess, one thing. And then I guess I would just offer, if there's anybody else that can think, you all have showered me with so much, affirmation. I can't think of a single negative thing right now.
Chuck?
I just want to not think of another negative thing, but say that you have been too kind, I think, to these people who've used your work in this way by saying everyone has their own intellectual project. But I think one of the things I was trying to say yesterday is this is a choice that joins the very narrative that you have confronted and uncovered. To use your work in this way is in fact to join the narrative that uses post-racialism to act as if there is no property in whiteness, and that move does that. So it's not just it's a misuse of your work, which
Naruto, I just got your tags on Twitter. Fucking Israel is planning to attack another fucking hospital. Apparently, another hospital has been warned by Israel that if they don't get that they're going to be bombed. What the fuck, man? How in God's name do they think that this is a good look? Wow.
has political consequences and people ought to be held to account for it.
Yes, sir. Hi. Is this a question? Okay. I didn't want to be that situation where somebody's got to leave the room.
Never in the middle of one of your talks. Hi, Professor Harris.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
We can continue that conversation later. I've been thinking a lot in light of the lawsuit that the Ohio women filed over the birth of their Blackish or not white child, and the relationship between the discussion of the deprivation of whiteness as the deprivation of due property, because it's whiteness is a property interest. But now we are sort of in this paradigm of being saddled with the debt or the liability of a negative situation, a race that you don't want. And I'm wondering what the legal prism will become for understanding that phenomenon, because I'm sure that cases like this will continue to come up.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the courts do with this one. And I guess what I was trying to suggest is that, in a way, the doctrinal moves are one level to interrogate, which I think are important.
Does anyone know what the courts did with
what
that
I
case?
think of is, what is the cultural context under which even this claim is even cognizable, right? What are the set of assumptions under which you can even fashion this as a cognizable claim for a breach, right? And so it's that level at which the racial ideology is functioning that makes that a claim that you can read and understand, right? And the specificity with which it's making certain claims about the burdens are really, it's almost like it's, you remember that Peggy McIntosh piece about specifying the benefits of whiteness? It's almost like that complaint it is another iteration of that. And so that's, I'm very interested. Don't get me wrong. I'll be fascinated to see. I'm trying to imagine the judge's response. But I really was also trying to hearken to the question of what is it that even makes that claim cognizable? Not even legally cognizable. I'm just talking about that we can read it and understand what it's saying. Okay.
All right. I think we're going to end it there, guys. It doesn't really seem like there's much else going on. I just want to say, it just occurred to me in rather hilarious fashion. Okay, so yesterday, like Nick Fuentes wanted his followers to like fast because the Pope wanted to do a fast, and he's going to do a Twitter space where he's going to pray a rosary or something. And like, I'm not Catholic, I'm not Christian. I wasn't actually planning on like participating in any of this because like I don't believe in this shit. But it just occurred to me as I'm sitting here that I did actually accidentally fast today, because literally the only thing I've had to eat all day was the top of this here muffin. And I have had nothing else to eat. So I have another show in a little over an hour. So I'm going to go get some dinner now. I feel like I have accidentally followed the fasting rules. But guys, I really do want to thank you for joining me here today. Thank you, Panda Rage, for asking such good questions. I don't know if VIP's here, but thank you, VIP, for asking some good questions. Thank you, everyone, especially if you're new here. I know watching this type of content is not really like the easiest thing in the world. And so I do appreciate you guys, especially those who make it to the very end. As a reminder, I do have another show coming up at in about an hour from now at 9:30, and that's going to be nothing remotely controversial. That's going to be a more lighthearted, fun look at the news. I'm going to go get my blood sugar in check before we do that because I'm already feeling like I'm getting a little crazy because of not eating all day accidentally. But we do stream every single day at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We do a lot of stuff like this. So if you ever want to learn about socialism, definitely stop back. And of course, do make sure you're subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. It is free to subscribe, but if you do want to support the work I'm doing and get perks, you can sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. I do plan on posting those clips that we took today on the Substack in a little bit, just to make a nice place for everyone to go where they can find this information. But I do appreciate you guys hanging out today. I will be back in a little bit. And take care, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon. Bye.